Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, rumors, and discussion. And this week, the Ahsoka trailer is here, and boy, oh boy, did it deliver 2.5 minutes of non-stop iconic Star Wars goodness. We will be breaking that down in depth. That's going to make up the bulk of the show. We'll also talk about the Emmy nominations that Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Mando racked up, which is pretty exciting. We'll also talk about Bob Iger sticking around for a little bit longer and some of the crazy things he's saying, because apparently old Bob is same as old new Bob, and that's just what we're stuck with in this insane world that we're living in. And of course, we'll have another iconic award-eligible edition of Ask the SWU, our classic segment from the end of the show where we answer your questions. All this and so much more on what will surely be a jam-packed episode of the podcast. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. My name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, he's the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? It's a shame there's just nothing going on in the world that today. You know, it's not like, Hollywood isn't about to shut down or anything like that. It's too bad we don't have a new Star Wars trailer. Oh yeah, by the way, we do. So yeah, well, at least we'll have something happy to talk about. Yeah, this is probably the last Star Wars we get for a while. So buckle up, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, Ben, that sounds vaguely threatening. Sounds like you're going to take it away. You personally are going to go, no more.
I am not
no more
part of the strikers, but I am amped up by the strikers. I'm like, give it to them. Yeah.
Give them hell. I love it. I love it. Joining us, as always, good friend and co-host, Chris Seekell.
Hello. So I stumbled across the World Between Worlds and ended up in this random hotel room. And also, no one call me while I'm podcasting because I'm doing it from my phone.
That would make for quite the call-in segment.
Wow.
One of two things will happen. I'm not sure. Either you will hear the Star Wars theme very loudly, or the phone will just start shaking like there's an earthquake. I don't know what setting it's on.
I kind of want to know. I kind of want to know what's going to happen. And so, Ben, this is on you. At some point during the show, at some point, let's say in the next hour.
You're putting me up to this?
Yes, I'm putting you up to this. At some point in the next hour, you're just going to give Chris a phone call, an old school classic phone call, and we're just going to find out what happened. But do it at a point when nobody's expecting it.
Oh my gosh. And it's like, don't be like, you're going to have to figure out how to pretend to use your phone throughout the show so that when you do it, it's not like a different thing that you're all of a sudden going like this.
Yeah. Ben, it's all on you.
I just got roped into this thing. Whatever.
Yeah, we've put you at the center of this prank, Ben. Also joining us, as always, from the Raeside, it's Hannah Raeside.
G'day there. Great to be back for one of the most smoothest, sexiest Star Wars trailers we've ever gotten ever. Can't wait to get into it. It's going to be a good day.
Yeah, and to think earlier in this week there was also a behind the scenes kind of thing that was put out. And
that's right.
We were thinking that's going to be the show. That's going to be the show. Is this thing about Rosario Dawson, how she said she wanted to play Ahsoka on social media, and it led to a campaign, and then she got the part, and all that's exciting and wonderful and all sorts of stuff. Like that was going to be, I think that would have been a solid opener for the show. And instead they're like, you know what? Here's a 2.5 minute trailer. And yeah, it's good stuff. I will say though, just like tiny little bit selfishly, as a San Diego Comic-Con attendee, I'm like, couldn't we have done this next week? Couldn't we have done this next week in Hall H with 7,000 people? Like I'm thinking about this trailer. I'm thinking about all of the like wow moments. Just selfishly, I love it. And I'm glad everybody.
No one would be there. It would be just Dave Filoni on a stage going, "Here's the trailer."
I'd attend that panel. I'd attend that panel. I'd be there in a heartbeat. I'd be like,
I have a feeling that one Kevin Smith might have bought SDCC after a certain incident and isn't letting a certain franchise promote itself there anymore.
Kevin's like, you stole my Hall H crowd. What's that? 8 years ago. You never be in Hall H again. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, we'll get into discussing the Ahsoka trailer in just a moment. But as always, we want to remind you of a couple of things. And the main thing is to punch the subscribe button, Chewy. Punch it. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your shows. That way you will never miss an episode. If you want to participate in Ask the SWU, the quickest and easiest way to do that if you're listening live is to super chat. Super chat with us. Make a small donation to the show so we can keep the lights on, and we will get to your comments. If you can't do that, or if you're not listening live, you don't have the means, that's fair. We completely understand that. Join the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. That's the other place to get in your questions, your comments, your submissions for Ask the SWU. And if you don't really have a comment, you just want to like support the show financially for whatever reason, you can become a channel member and we'll give you a clone number. I don't know what we're up to. I've completely lost track. I feel like that bit has fallen off the edge. So maybe we have to come up with something else, but you can also become a channel member, and that's fun. And that's nice. And make sure you're following us on social media at the SWU. That includes Threads. We're on Threads. Isn't that exciting? We can all thread together and talk about Star Wars, and you'll never miss an episode.
Threads is getting boring because they haven't changed anything, and there's no search feature. There's no bunch of things. But yay, it's better than Twitter still.
Yay!
I mean, it works though. It doesn't crash like the other attempts to make another Twitter in the past, and that's what I like about it.
Or Twitter itself of recently.
Yeah, or Twitter itself.
I have yet to exceed my rate limit, whatever the hell that means, on Threads. Anyways, all right, let's get into things and let's talk about the Ahsoka trailer. We'll go around the table, give some initial impressions on this trailer, and Ben, you know it. Of course, we're going to you first. What'd you think of Ahsoka official trailer Disney Plus, as is the YouTube video title?
Right. Yeah. So I didn't think it was possible for them to top the first trailer, because I thought the first trailer was really, really great, as we discussed previously. And somehow they managed to top it. And I think it was just the fact that it was kind of more of the same, but also expanding it out. And it was the fact, I think there's a lot of like VFX shots in this trailer. There's a lot of space shots. There's a lot of people fighting and grand landscapes and all this kind of stuff that they probably weren't finished back when they heard the first trailer back at Celebration. But now we have these, and it looks incredible. I mean, I think this is the best. Again, Star Wars upping itself on TV, doing this in a way that is just bar none. I mean, it's the best looking show so far. And so I'm like, I don't know how to feel about Ahsoka, because I'm like, you know, what is this show going to be? We've had so many expectations for so many years. We've had that Rebels sequel in our minds for so many years. Like, what is this show going to be now that it's here? And it just looks amazing. And ultimately, I'm like, is this gonna be the best show yet? Is this gonna top those? And I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. I don't want to have too high expectations, but it looks damn good. And I'm really, really excited. I didn't know I could get more excited for this show, but yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, we made the Rebels season 5 joke that's been made a lot in the last several months since the first trailer came out. I'm gonna say though, it feels a bit more like Rebels season 7. And we'll get into why, because it certainly feels like time has passed and stuff has happened to our heroes and they've had new experiences and grown. Imagine that. Imagine heroes growing in the years between stories, not just putting them in a stasis cube so that they come out as the same person they were in the thing you last remembered. Imagine that. Hannah, we'll go to you next. What did you think overall of the Ahsoka trailer?
Yeah, I think I just echo so much of what Ben just said. I think the thrill of the trailer that we got at Celebration was amazing, but this just, it still had that punch. It didn't wear off any of that, oh, it's Ahsoka, yeah. It was just so captivating. And there was just so many elements in it, and some really big like talking points, which I'm really excited to get into the discussion of just major name mentions, like major kind of plot points kind of hinted at of what we could be seeing for the show. It was just one of the best trailers I've ever seen. It was so good. And I made a tweet afterwards just saying, this is the most Star Wars feeling show. I'm going to just blanket statement that, not even seeing the show yet, this feels the most Star Wars aesthetically to me. Which, I don't know what that is. Is it the lighting? Is it the camera movements? Is it the costuming? I don't know what it is, but it just felt so good. And, we're really, I'm hoping this show is going to be as immersive as these trailers are. But great trailer, great stuff.
Feeling Star Warsy is such an elusive thing. Like, it's hard to it means different things to different people.
Yeah.
But I think this show definitely captures it, whatever it is. Chris, your thoughts on the trailer?
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said here. It very much does feel like a sequel to Star Wars Rebels, even more so than it did after the previous trailers and clips and things that we've seen from it. And perhaps that's maybe one of the reasons why it does feel so like Star Wars, like Hannah said, because it's very much a continuation of something we've already seen, but in live action rather than animation. So that makes sense. I definitely think the scope of this show is very much seen in this trailer. And I think that's something we might mention later in the show that Rosario said in an interview as well, and that behind the scenes thing. Is the scope of the show so broad. So at this point, like, it's interesting to me. This is the first time after watching this that I found it kind of interesting that it's called Ahsoka and not something else, because there wasn't actually, like, there was a lot of Ahsoka in the trailer, but there was a lot of shots that Ahsoka was not in. Ahsoka was not not dominating this trailer, which was interesting because the show's about her. The show has her name in it, so I think that's kind of interesting that it's showing to be a bit more of an ensemble show, which makes sense because, again, it's very much that Rebels sequel, and I feel like whatever they wrote for, if that rumor was true that there would be another season of Star Wars Rebels on Disney Plus, if that ended up becoming true, I'm assuming that some of their ideas for that probably made it into this. I would think. So I can't imagine Dave Filoni come up with a completely different story just because it's a live action show and just because it's the Ahsoka show and not Star Wars Rebels season 5 or 7 or whatever. So that's very interesting. So hard for me to build up expectations. It's tough. I went into Obi-Wan with a lot of big expectations and I was slightly disappointed by it. I went into Andor with less expectations and my expectations were completely exceeded. So I have to kind of dial that back and just say, like, this show's going to be what it's going to be. I can't really adjust my expectations based on what I just saw, but I was very excited to see what we just saw. It looks great.
Yeah, the expectations game is just such a weird thing. It's just such a weird thing because it's so easy to get so overexcited on something. And I would recommend everybody go back and listen to a podcast we did from New York Comic Con in 2017, in which we discussed how The Last Jedi was going to be the best, most universally beloved Star Wars movie of all time. And, I love The Last Jedi. A lot of people on this show like The Last Jedi. but you know,
That's
it took a while to get there.
I mean, I know we've even said some really embarrassing things in the past, but I didn't know he'd been that bad. Jeez.
So let's talk about this trailer. Talk about it. Kind of. I've sort of spent this week trying to think about like what's the best way to approach this trailer. Is it to go sort of chronologically through it? No, I don't think so. Is it to go by character? That's I think that's our best bet. I think because there are so many characters and they all have several moments sprinkled nicely through the trailer. It's very balanced in that way. So let's start. And we're talking about the Ahsoka show. Let's start with Sabine. Start with Sabine Wren. I think the biggest reveal in this is that between the ending of Rebels, or at least the pre-epilogue ending of Rebels, the ending of Rebels sort of proper, and the start of this show, Ahsoka trained Sabine and walked away from her. Chris, let me throw this to you. What did you think of that reveal, and what do you think this is going?
This speaks a lot to what we were saying earlier about this, like Rebel season 7 and not Rebel season 5. Like, not only does there need to be exposition about what happened in Rebels for people that haven't seen Rebels, but it sounds like we got to also learn what happened between Rebel season 4 and now. So it's interesting hearing that there's stuff. So I think it's interesting because it's like, we don't have a lot of examples of a Jedi or Force user trading a non-Force user. Like on the Sith side, I think of General Grievous as one of the only examples that I can think of. He doesn't have Force abilities, yet he was trained in the Jedi arts or whatever. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic to see. So I don't know. I don't have really any thoughts on it. I can't really process it because I don't know why this stuff happened yet. So I can only speculate. And what's the point of that? So all I can say
what
is...
do you mean, what's the point of that? This is a Star Wars podcast. All we do is speculate.
I mean, you know, Sabine's a Mandalorian. Mandalorians tend to be pretty headstrong. We have had a few very headstrong Mandalorians already. That we've seen. And so you wonder if that there might be some clashes between Ahsoka and Sabine over how to do certain things, and maybe some differences in duty. Ahsoka is probably very much a character who might not care about some of the kind of day-to-day things that are happening. Like, I think she feels kind of removed. Like, she's all about the balance of the Force. I think that's important to her, but I think maybe some of the struggles of like the Mandalorians and the struggles of the Ghost Crew and like specific things like that, Ahsoka might not care about as much. She might disappear to work on Forcey things. So perhaps, you know, there might have been a point where Sabine wanted to go help somebody out, maybe help out Mandalore when there were dire straits, or help out other members of the Ghost Crew. And maybe Ahsoka, you know, was very much like how, you know, Yoda and Obi-Wan didn't want to have Luke go and face Vader and go and rescue his friends until his training was complete. Ahsoka might have been like, "You're not ready for this. You know, let me finish your training first." And then Sabine might have said, "Oh no, I got to go do this." So there's some speculation. Let's see.
There you go.
Let's see if that's what happened. Everybody's going to be mad that it didn't happen. That's the problem with this.
Yeah, I think what's curious to me about this is we have seen Sabine train with Kanan. If you go back to season 3 of Rebels, so you sort of start there, and you know, it's sort of twofold. Like, what? Again, like that question you're asking, Chris, of what could it be that would cause these two to split? What would drive them apart? That's interesting on the one hand, but on the other hand, it also kind of recontextualizes, I think, Ahsoka's decision not to want to train Grogu if we go back to season 2 of Mandalorian.
That's true.
Because, you know, she says in that episode she can't train him. She's seen what can happen even to the best of Jedi. And obviously she's talking about Anakin. And I think that's front and center in her mind, especially with a character like Grogu, who is powerful in that way. But maybe she's coming off of a real negative experience trying to train Sabine and going, what's even the point of me trying this? Why would I try this with this kid when I couldn't take this Mandalorian, this already seasoned warrior who had some training with another Jedi? And why should I even bother trying if I couldn't get her to where she needed to be or where I think she needs her to be? Why would I even try with Grogu? And I think that's kind of an interesting place to find Ahsoka, because the other question about I think this trailer raises is how much of Ahsoka's past are we going to delve into, and how much are we going to unpack everything that she's been through? Because we've seen Ahsoka go through a lot, but we had never really seen her unpack it. We've never really seen her process it. A little bit in the Trace and Rafa storyline, but some pretty big stuff happens after that. And, you know, the reuniting of Ahsoka and Sabine, which I presume which we know is going to happen. That's all over the trailer. That probably is going to force Ahsoka to confront some elements of her past that she's not ready to face just yet. Hannah, let's go to you. What are you thinking about Ahsoka and Sabine?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think my approach is, or guess, is similar to what we've been saying. I think the character of Ahsoka is so, like, important, and she's become so likable and talked about and popular with Star Wars fans. Because I think she's very relatable, and she becomes this quite likable, and you kind of root for her through the Clone Wars. And then she goes through these really like traumatic events. And so we're kind of with her when she goes through that. So I think you're right on the path of like this idea that at the point of the show we're going to be jumping into, something's happened where she's not training Sabine. And I think that's going to be such a core root of the show of, you know, surfacely Jedi story, fun, hero, let's go. But I think it's going to be, if it's going to hit the right like head and right kind of feeling that we want from the Ahsoka character, is that she's a vessel for us to kind of go on that journey with her and relate with her. And I think she's such a character that you kind of, in terms of relating to her, you can kind of superimpose your life with her life in this weird way. So I think if they're going to try and show this, there was some sort of obviously issue, difficulty, challenge that she faced as an adult, even though she's so wise at this point, she's so intelligent, she's learned so much. I think there is quite a lot of trauma, for lack of a better word, of her experience as a apprentice, as a Padawan, as a learner, and being on the other side of that and being a master in terms of just teaching someone, whether that's I think everyone's freaking out a little too much about, oh, is she Force sensitive now? It's like, oh, probably not, but she could be. I don't know. That's weird. But it's like, that's not the conversation. The conversation is that, oh no, that's a storyline there for us to understand how Ahsoka has processed her journey as an apprentice and being on the other side of that and having an apprentice, and it's not just gonna be like, oh yeah, I had a hard time, I know how to do it now. It's gonna be a lot more complex than that. So I think it's this story, like I think there's obviously been an issue in the past, or Ahsoka's faced some sort of challenge, and I think that's actually gonna be quite a heavy concept idea that we explore maybe in like those like early episodes, like the first 4 episodes. I think they're saying that's like a little bit earlier on or something. You know, I think that definitely could be quite a big storyline there. That was a long explanation.
Yeah, but a good one.
I had to start from the start there.
Now start from the very beginning. Yeah, I mean, a way for Ahsoka to process, you know, what happened with her master is to try to be a master herself. And you know, her trauma from what happened with Anakin might manifest itself in her not trusting herself to be the teacher. You know, she obviously idolized Anakin to such a, to the nth degree. And then, finding out what happened to him, it, shatters her world. And I think everything that we've seen with Ahsoka since then is her grappling with the truth of what happened to Anakin Skywalker. We see her find that out over the course of Rebels season 2, that is. And then everything after that is now, okay, what do we do with that information? Now that we know it, now that, not just we know what happened to him, but we know that he could come back from that. How do we go forward? And how do we avoid repeating those same mistakes? And it's, not to make everything about The Last Jedi, but it's a similar storyline that Luke grapples with. He doesn't want to fail Ben the way Obi-Wan felt he failed Anakin. And there's this sort of repeating cycle of masters who lose their students or students who lose their masters, not wanting to repeat that cycle. And in doing so, repeat that cycle.
Yeah, I think maybe part of this, I'm wondering if this is driven by plot or if this is a character-based thing. Because we know that the New Jedi Order isn't really going to get started up until Rey comes along, because that's the plot of the Rey movie as it has been revealed. So the Luke thing failed, and then he wanted the Jedi to end. And now, from a plot perspective, you have to have Ahsoka not caring about restarting the Jedi Order because, it just can't happen because of plot. But from a character point of view, you would expect Ahsoka to be even further than that than Luke. Luke is not someone who walked away from the Jedi Order until it was gone, after he failed to start it up again. Whereas Ahsoka, at the Jedi's height, walked away and decided that it wasn't for her and followed the path of a gray Jedi, essentially. So I totally get why she wouldn't want to start training people, because that's kind of like starting the Jedi Order again, and that's really not her path. But I would always refer to Lord of the Rings when analyzing Ahsoka, because I feel like Filoni is writing Ahsoka like Gandalf. So again, he's the type of character that disappears for a while and then comes back suddenly. That's Ahsoka. So yeah, she's not the character that's going to be with the heroes throughout the entire journey, which makes it really fascinating that there's a show about her, because we haven't had that yet. Even in the Clone Wars, she was in and out.
Yeah. Ben, go ahead. You've been awfully quiet.
Yeah.
Ben's just been listening to the podcast.
I've just been soaking all this
Absorbing.
Biggest fan, number one.
You're Ahsoka-ing it in.
Because I had some theories about the trailer, and you changed my perspective on them. But like, just the whole idea of Ahsoka and what's this show going to be about ultimately. And I think through this trailer, we're kind of seeing that this is Ahsoka kind of catching up, kind of getting back in the universe, trying to find a mission. And it fascinates me to the idea of Sabine taking her on as a quote unquote apprentice, a master and apprentice thing, especially since Sabine's not really a Jedi, but you have to take into account, like, she was technically trained by Kanan to wield the Darksaber. And, maybe that was something that maybe that's where Ahsoka's leaving off, or we're taking up from, was where Kanan left off. But I like the idea that also this implied history that stuff's happened similarly to Luke, in regards to we catch up with Luke and a lot of stuff's happened and a lot of mistakes have been made. And Ahsoka's in a position where I think in Mandalorian especially, she seems very haunted by what happened in the Clone Wars, the prequels, and everything like that. And you could chalk that up to, just everything that happened with Anakin. I would imagine a lot of Jedi have survivor's guilt. There's a lot of that going on with them. But also, it seems to be that, even though none of that was really Ahsoka's fault, she can maybe blame herself for some of that. There's also been some maybe mistakes since then in regards to what she's done and things. And what's interesting is that Sabine is the one character in Rebels I feel like she never really had much of a relationship with in Rebels that I can remember. She obviously was kind of very direct with people like Hera, Kanan, Ezra. Like those are your bigs because they were very into the mystical side and the Force and the Jedi and stuff like that. But Sabine was someone like, I'll have to go back and watch Rebels. I can't remember honestly, but like, what was their relationship? What was Sabine and Ahsoka's dynamic, and how is it picking up from here? And obviously, there's stuff that has happened between, I guess, when she got off Malachor to the Rebels finale, that epilogue, which we kind of assumed, oh, they're gonna be picking up right where they left off. We're going off to find Ezra. No, this needs to be kind of smack dab in the middle of this. We have this whole thing where we see Sabine with long hair, and then she's like, nice haircut, and then that cuts to her with short hair going off with Ahsoka. So I'm like, wow, this is going to be like a lot of timeline jumping and kind of messing with the timeline, which is interesting.
Here's my prediction for all that. What we're talking about here, the sort of the Ahsoka and Sabine agreeing to work together again, and us beginning to understand that there was this past that we never saw. That's all episode 1. And episode 1 ends with the Rebels epilogue. And we pick up with episode 2, continuing the story forward. And that's why they're doing, and we didn't mention this yet, the 2-episode premiere.
That makes sense.
Because I think when they do multi-episode premieres, it's for a reason. And I think they know that episode 1 is going to be a lot of setup, a lot of catching people up, catching everybody up to where we are in the story, because we missed a whole chapter, but then also taking episode 2 to begin pushing the story into the future. And Mando didn't really have to do that, so they just said, all right, 1 episode, let's go. Obi-Wan kind of had the similar vibe where you needed to get him off Tatooine to get the story going, and so you did episodes 1 and 2 as one. And then Andor, of course, was just crazy and said 3-episode arcs. So they're like, we better just show all 3 episodes for everybody to understand this thing, what's going on with this show. So I think it's intentional, very, very intentional. Not just, hey, let's do 2 episodes because why not? Because really, you'd want this to last for as long as possible, and you'd rather have it go for 8 weeks than 7.
Yeah, it's very clear that the premiere of every show needs to be a complete story or arc, and whether it's a very long episode like that first episode of Mandalorian season 2, The Marshal, that was like over an hour, I think.
I don't know why they do that for every show. Oh,
yeah, so either they do that, they have just a very long 1 episode that tells the complete story, or they do the 2 episodes or 3 episodes that tell like a complete story, and that makes sense. I mean, even Clone Wars, despite the fact that it was 2 different stories that weren't completely interrelated, I believe Clone Wars premiered with 2 episodes, Ambush and the First of the Malevolence episodes.
Yeah, as much as I dislike the 2-episode premieres, because I'm just like, I want to drag this out as long as
Ben
possible.
hates fun. He's like, I don't want 2
that's right.
Why don't we just
have
10 minutes of each episode for a whole year? Why don't we just do that?
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I like the micro series format. I think is just the perfect.
Take your ice cream cone and put it in the freezer. Wait an hour and then lick it again.
But ultimately, they know that when they release an episode, it's like, oh, if the first episode is not like a banger, they'll be the people on the internet is not going to be like, well, I didn't quite feel that episode, but I'll wait till next week and I'll keep watching till the end to have a proper thing. No, people are like, I hated that sucked, and it's like you got to give people a good dose of the show to get them intrigued.
Ben, not to drag you onto your other show for a second here, but like, let's look at the reactions. It's the episode 1 of Secret Invasion. That first episode, it's kind of bad. The next 3 are killer. They're terrific. They're bang, 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 like amazing stuff. And I think if you'd done episodes 1 and 2 together, maybe you have a different reaction.
I have.
Yeah, I was
I
because
have
I watched the second episode last night. I was like, that would have worked better.
Hannah, jump in here.
I have 3 things to say. First thing, if Andor had just dropped only the first episode, I wouldn't have watched the rest of the show. I would not have continued the show. I would have probably waited a month after it finished and then maybe watch it. Oh my word. The second thing, imagine if we're all pronouncing Ezra's name wrong. Imagine if it's Ezra instead of like a it's like an E.
But we have a whole show. We have a whole show where his
I know,
name
we've
is
got it all wrong.
But isn't
Ezra
that
Bridger.
But
That's
just
the
how
first thing he says when he comes back. He's like, "Hey guys, you've been pronouncing my name wrong. It's Ezra Bridger.
Yeah, that should be the thing. That should be the storyline.
It's Ezra Bridger, okay?
Yeah. Ezra. It should be Ezra.
That's how they say it in New Zealand. Ezra Bridger.
True. Actually, that's just a New Zealander saying Ezra.
Is Omega going to be in this series? Pronouncing everybody's name, Ezra.
Ezra. Oh, that's so true. Oh wow. Third thing.
Ahsoka. Hera.
Ahsoka.
Hera.
Hera.
Hannah, you should know better than to bring up something to do with an accent on this show because we will never get out of it.
And immediately regretted that.
Zib. Zib. Garrett Zib.
Zib. Oh my word. Chipper. How would she say chopper?
Chopper.
That was like that was a southern. Well, how's it going?
Chopper.
Chopper.
Hey, Chop.
Chopper.
You come down here right now.
Chopper. That's Chopper.
All right, everybody, shut up. We're getting. We're moving. All right, everybody, stop. We're
okay. What the hell are we saying? Oh yeah. Back to serious discussion. You know what I think they'll do with this, like the character, like development of Ahsoka is like Kanan, essentially Kanan's character development in season 1 of Rebels, which was him grappling with taking on Ezra as an apprentice, and is he like good enough as a master? And he did a lot of soul searching through that whole season of like kind of his worth as a master and if he can do it. You know, like that's why we had the Luminara Unduli episode, like the episode where they go to the temple in Lothal. Like, yes, that's an Ezra finding his kyber crystal, but it's also a Kanan like figuring out if he can be a master and if he can do it. And so many of the little things all through every episode of that season 1, which is like, can Kanan be a master and a leader? And I think that is going to be so similar to what we see in this series for Ahsoka. I think it's going to be just like quite literally that of like, what are the capabilities? What kind of place does she need to be at to be an effective leader, master, and person in the Force for Sabine and for others? I think that's going to be so similar.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to ask this question because otherwise the internet will get mad at us for not contemplating this ever so slightly. So you get one word answer, yes or no. Hannah, you already alluded to this, so I'll ask you first. Sabine, Force sensitive, yes or no?
No.
Chris?
No.
No.
Why is the
question? Ben has stepped away, so we'll ask him in a minute. I'm going to throw caution to the wind and say yes.
What?
Yes. Yep. I think it was there all along. I'm going to say yes. The chat is divided sort of along a lot the same lines. J Star Wars 360 says no. Jesse says no. Matthew Hardy says yes. Ben, break the tie. Sabine, yes or no? Is she Force sensitive?
No.
You guys are wrong.
Why wouldn't that? Why would she be Force? That would be such a curveball.
But why not?
But why though? Why she hung out with 2 Jedi for like 10 years and they never noticed? Come on.
I don't know. This could be, you know, Ahsoka's you know, her growing wisdom, knows how to, you know, bring the Force out of everybody. Because everybody's got midichlorians. Everybody's got the ability.
That's the angle they should approach it. That's the thing. They should do like, hey, you know, anybody like. And Sabine's like, no, I'm not Force. And she's like, no, anybody can access the Force. You just have to try really hard.
Exactly. All right, that's enough on that. Let's talk about Hera. let's talk about Hera, the other return.
Hera.
Yeah. The other returning main Rebels character who's very prominent in this trailer. It begins with the villains, who we'll get to in a moment, and then it goes to Hera pretty much right away. And she has the line, "I've spent most of my life fighting a war. That's why I'm trying to convince you to help me prevent another one." Ben, let's go to you right away. What do you think of what we see from Hera in this trailer?
Yeah, because I'll admit, from the first trailers and the images that we've seen just previously, I was having a little trouble adjusting to live action Hera, just because this is a character that I've only seen in animation, and I've adjusted very well to Ahsoka. Ahsoka was a little bit of an adjustment, but I felt like I've enjoyed Rosario Dawson's performance. As much as I was like, get Ashley to do it, like I was in there, and at the same point I was like, well, can't you just get Vanessa Marshall and just paint her green? Just do that. Like, what's the deal? Like, I know Mary Elizabeth Winstead is incredible. Like, I know she'll do great, but I don't know about this. Watching this trailer and seeing her performance, I was like, okay, I'm feeling this. I really am feeling, the tone of her voice. It feels like she watched Rebels, which she has been open about. The entire cast has been open about it. Hey, they've been watching Rebels constantly. They've been studying. They've been doing their homework. It feels like she's been watching and listening to Vanessa Marshall, and she's doing it. And I'm like, okay, that's Hera. I can accept this. I feel like this is the same character, which, it can be an adjustment, and that's just the way it's going to be when you're having different actors, playing the same character in slightly different timelines. But I think she's great. She looks great. I think it's not, I don't think it's easy to pull off a Twi'lek. I think we've seen a lot of them, but most of them have been in the background. I think pulling off one that's done by, an A-list actor and doing so, right in front of the camera and making it really believable and making a good performance, I think is not an easy task. But she looks incredible. She sounds incredible. And I'm very much excited to see what role she's playing. And, again, seeing her acting against Genevieve Borelli's Mon Mothma is just the icing on the cake, really.
Mm-hmm. I'll say, just on the look real quick, I had a much easier time adjusting to Hera in live action than Ahsoka. For whatever reason, this is just working for me. And maybe it's just the fact that I got used to Ahsoka. So I'm like, well, this is just how we do things now. And Ahsoka just had to be the one that went first. But it does, for whatever reason, I see her and I have a much easier time going Hera than I did with Ahsoka in the first.
Hera does not have a lot of very pronounced features. Like, in general, the animation of Rebels is a lot less stylized than the animation of Clone Wars. So taking Ahsoka and moving Ahsoka to live action, that's very difficult because Ahsoka has very unrealistic features. Like, the points in her face are very pointy, because it's supposed to be as if someone had carved her out of wood like a marionette. That's the Thunderbirds animation style. Whereas we didn't see Hera in Clone Wars. She was introduced in Rebels, which is more of a Macquarie, more realistic, almost like halfway between Pixar, halfway between realistic painting style. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it translates really, really well to someone with a quite symmetrical face in live action, is because Hera has kind of, there's no real caricatureness or pronouncedness or angles to her appearance.
You know who did look good on camera as well? Bloody nice lady in the bar in Book of Boba Fett. What's her name? I don't know her name.
Bloody nice lady in the bar. I like her. Let's go with that. My favorite character.
What's it like? Oh, don't no one tell me. I gotta get it. I gotta get it.
Flashdance actress.
Like Sasha. No,
Sacha Baron Cohen. Yes.
What's her name?
Sasha Banks.
Shit. Mistress Manu.
I don't even have to come up with trivia games. We'll just let
Okay,
Hannah do
okay.
that on her own.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay, I got it. I will end your suffering and say you're thinking of Garza Whip.
Garza Whip. I see. It was some
Trivia
ridiculous
champion Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
I totally didn't just Google that.
But anyway, Garza Whip. I felt like she pulled off a really good Twi'lek. Like that was a really, like I was like, this is a Twi'lek, correct? Like it was a little bit like, oh yeah, they've got like something. It's just a human with something on their head. But I think it moved well. Like humans as Twi'leks will move well in live action going forward.
I don't understand where this skepticism about live action Twi'leks comes from, because like Amy Allen was fine as Ayla Secure. I was not aware that was an issue.
Well, and
even she never like looked at the camera and had lines though. Like there's
what about Bib Fortuna?
Yeah, the original.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't know why he looked creepy as hell. Am I creating beef with live action Twi'leks? I don't even have beef with live action Twi'leks. I don't know where this came from.
I don't know where.
We had the brother and sister duo in that Mandalorian episode in season 1.
Yeah,
like, and they were great.
Yeah,
they were great. Yeah.
My least favorite Mandalorian episode. There you go. Fun fact.
And who can forget about if we're talking about green Twi'leks, let's talk about Ula.
There you go. Twi'leks go back to
who's Ula?
The early days. She gets thrown in the pit.
Ula is that Rancor.
Yeah. Ooh la la.
She has just a big role that yeah.
Well, okay, so getting back to Hera, the character, as opposed to the design of Twi'leks through the years, an excellent little trip down Star Wars history lane. But I think that kind of the key moment in the trailer for Hera is this. It's a continuation of something we saw in the previous trailer, but we get a little bit more to it in this go around, which is Hera talking to Mon Mothma.
Yes.
And the new Republic senators. This is going to be really interesting to see Mon Mothma in this context, in this show, having previously spent the better part of a season with her on Andor at a very different time in her life. Chris, you reacted quite excitedly to Mon Mothma. Let's go to you. What do you think? What are you thinking about what's going on here?
They're putting the things together that they kept apart for so long for reasons that I don't really understand. Like, one of the most confusing things to me about the year 2016 was how they had a movie and a show that took place at the same time, and they did nothing, no mention of either of them in each other's stories. And that was very confusing to me. So now they've, of course, gone back and done the prequel to that movie, and Mon Mothma was a big part of it. So I'm excited to finally see these kind of two parts of the rebellion meet each other, because they've been really trying to keep them separate, the Ghost crew and the Rogue One crew, which is fascinating to me of why they would do that. So but cool. It's cool. It's great. I love the connective tissue. I love how this connects all the Disney Plus shows together, because you have Ahsoka and a lot of the other Disney Plus shows. And now you have Mon Mothma connecting things back to Andor, which is great. And so now really Obi-Wan feels, funnily enough, like the most disconnected show.
And it might wind up feeling pretty connected to this too, given a rumored guest star. Throw that
there's
one
like
in.
There's like 50 rumored guest stars though.
Yeah, the most prominent one.
About.
The most prominent one, the one who would wear the same hat as me. The one who...
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Actually, that went a few times. I had to go through a few different actors before I got the one that you were referring to.
Hayden Christensen.
Yes.
You haven't figured it out. There was a rumor like a year and a half ago that he was going to be in it. Yeah.
I thought about the pilot guy first. And then I'm like, wait, he was not in.
Wait.
What is going on?
You know what? If we're gonna have all this connective tissue to Andor and Mon Mothma and this kind of part of the rebellion that was shown through Andor, we have to have some sort of homage to Krieger. Because he died in the name of the rebellion. The Krieger, he's got to sacrifice. I don't know why he's so Irish.
He became Scottish.
Wow. Krieger.
What about those guys?
What if Luthen shows up?
What about those guys that died? Those people that died in Kenobi that we only knew for like one episode, and everybody was like crying.
This is the second week in a row we have mentioned Wade from Kenobi on this podcast
because he left such an imprint. That is how you know there's a great character.
An imprint, all right.
But you know who would actually be a great character from Kenobi to include in this? Roken. Bring back Roken.
Yeah,
that's Rebels.
That's the guy that looks like Jordan, right? That's Roken.
Yes, that's O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character. Yeah. But what's going to be fascinating, I think, to have Ahsoka come out between seasons of Andor, is we're going to get Mon Mothma in very different times in her life, playing very different roles in the story, I think. Because in Andor, at least what we see in season 1, she's trying to help the rebellion get off the ground, and she's struggling with the sacrifices that entails, but she's willing to make them in the name of the rebellion. So she's very much who we're rooting for. We're hoping that she succeeds. From what we see in this, she seems to be standing in the way of Hera, of Ahsoka, of all these people that want to stop Thrawn. Because now she's no longer a rebel per se. Now she is the Senate. She is the government. Like she's thinking about other things, and she doesn't want to fight another war. And so we're going to get Mon Mothma, I don't want to say the antagonist, but possibly the obstacle in this show. And then we're going to go back to Andor next year and be like, yes, Mon Mothma, get out there and seize the day and stop the Empire and do all these rebel things. And it'll be very whiplashy, I think, but it will enhance the overall picture when you take that bird's eye view a few years from now.
This reminds me of the CW show, The 100. They did that a lot with characters where they like changed them from like protagonist to antagonist through multiple seasons. There's a lot of it's very common for CW shows to do stuff like that. So it's very interesting to have that and then have the timeline jumping because of the order that the things are being released in. Whereas, the future audiences won't notice this. Yeah. So it's very interesting. I think probably the reason why they're really setting Mon Mothma up for this position is she really has to be in this position because that's how it fits with Mandalorian season 3. Because Mandalorian season 3 was very much about how the New Republic has issues. Like it was very critical of the New Republic. The New Republic are not the protagonists of the Mandalorian season 3.
The protagonists of the Mandalorian season 3, at least who are sort of New Republic figures, are characters like Carson Teva, who, while they represent the New Republic, don't necessarily go along with it. And I think that's what we're going to see from Hera. And that line that Hera has later on, that's kind of one of the iconic lines from this trailer, once a rebel, always a rebel. I think in some ways it sounds like it's about Ahsoka. It sounds like it's about Sabine. I think it's about her. I think it's about herself. Because I think at some point in this story, Hera's going to go rogue from the New Republic. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe she could take Carson Teva with her. Or we could just bring in, that would be just great. Trying to get Paul Sun-Young Lee into more Star Wars.
I have a question though about Mon Mothma. Does Mon Mothma canonically die on Hosnian Prime, or do we know nothing about this?
I don't think we know.
I don't
Ben.
think we have a
don't
canon
know.
end
So-
for her. Like
so
she's like she's out of the picture by the time we get to like the whatever the how to say the napkin bombing in the whole thing with Leia being
yeah.
revealed as things like that whole book. I forget the name of the
That's
book, but like that whole
that's
thing, she's
Bloodline.
out of the picture by that
Bloodline?
point. Like she's retired, so I don't
so
think
is
she's
it-
ever.
So could we potentially see her die in this show?
I mean, we could because they can override
Mm.
the books. But if we're sticking with what's been established, I think she has to.
She's got some more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems
That's
like the implications. I'll have to go back and read the book. This is a great book, and I don't mind. But
Yeah.
like, I would love to know the kind of the things because I think it's implied that like she had like this long standing career and everyone had respected her and she had this thing. The thing with Mon Mothma that I'm thinking of now is just the fact that yes, in Rebels and in Andor, she is this kind of she's trying to find the middle ground. And she is a rebel. She is building up to becoming the leader of the rebellion, but she's still trying to be that mediator. And we see her, perhaps the first glimpse of her kind of being in the way of progress in Rogue One. She's the person that says, no, Jyn Erso, we're not going to help you. We can't go steal the Death Star plans. And it's up to everyone else in the rebellion going like, well, screw you, we're going to go do it. And then she's like, okay, fine, we'll go do it. We'll go send the armada. So I think further on from that, I think it will be just along the lines of, her doing it from a good place, but ultimately still standing in the way of what needs to be done. And I think all the bureaucracy and just the stonewalling that we see in Mandalorian in the New Republic is probably because of her.
Well, Mon Mothma is a politician. And I think the Mon Mothma that we see in Andor in particular and Rebels as well is a politician on the campaign trail. And the Mon Mothma we're going to see in this show is a politician in office. And the difference between, standing and giving a stump speech about, this is why we have to do all these things versus being put into that position of power and having all of the constraints and the pressures and the expectations that come with that. And, why inevitably people feel disillusioned with their politicians. And I think we're going to see that with Mon Mothma. I think we're going to come away from this show be feeling a little bit like, Mon, what the hell? Why are we doing things?
It's a more interesting story and
very,
very relatable when you have a situation where it's not like if the New Republic was competent and like took the reemergence of the Empire and eventual First Order seriously, like the sequels wouldn't happen. Like there wouldn't be a First Order. None of that would happen. They would have just squashed the Empire and got rid of them, and there would be that's that. It's that helplessness of like you have this big fleet, even though it's downsized because of Mon Mothma. You have all the power, but you won't use it. You won't actually you won't see what's right in front of your face, that this problem you need to fix, which is like, that stuff doesn't happen in real life, right? Totally not relatable.
Yeah, completely unrealistic. Star Wars is, after all, fantasy with no basis in reality. No, none whatsoever.
I don't know if I'm on board with the concept of, like, I know you're not saying villain, but like Mon, you kind of not agreeing with her, and like she's doing things that we wouldn't agree with as an audience. I don't know if that's going to be the route. I think it's going to be maybe. Oh man, I'm having so many thoughts.
Mon Mothma's wearing a hood and a dark cloak. What's going on with her? She seems kind of evil now.
The next galactic. That's how the show ends. She announces the next Galactic Empire 2.0.
Well, Ben, you brought up Rogue One, and you brought up Mon Mothma in Rogue One, and in Rogue One, she kind of plays a similar role. She is speaking for the Rebel Alliance as, kind of a political movement rather than a military one. And she says, no, we're not going to fight. We're not going to go on this mission. But then as soon as it starts to happen, as soon as, the Rogue One crew heads to Scarif and the battle begins, she's like low-key excited about it and low-key ready to throw her support behind it. And she says, she's the one that pulls Bail aside and is like, hey, your friend, the Jedi, can we contact him? So maybe we see a version of her that's like that, where, the first time or first couple of times we see her, she's saying, "No, Hera, no, you can't do this." But there may come a moment when, to put it extraordinarily literally, Hera needs to walk through a door to get to something that will help her fight Thrawn, and standing in the way is Mon Mothma. Physically, but it's going to be a showdown between the two of them, and maybe Mon Mothma will just step aside and say, "Go."
You know what?
Because that would be in keeping with who she is. I think, again, to go to Hera's thing, once a rebel, always a rebel. I think that is where Mon Mothma's heart is. Right. She has the heart of a rebel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that.
There you go. I nailed it. I was right.
Done. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was good.
Yeah. Let's talk about the villains. We get another look at Baylan and Shin. That's their names, right?
Right.
They kind of open the trailer. Baylan has the line, war is inevitable, and in order to, one must destroy in order to create. And we see them through the trailer. Baylan seems to be fighting Ahsoka more. Shin seems to be taking on Sabine, and of course they meet with Morgan Elsbeth, who we met in Mandalorian season 2. What do we think? Anyone can take this, whoever wants to jump on. And what do we think of what we see from these characters? Where do we think we're going? What are they in it for, besides, just helping out Thrawn?
They confuse me a bit. I guess so that's kind of the point, is that they're Thrawn's force sensitive hands, essentially. Is that kind of how it's set up?
That's sort of what's implied, I think.
Yeah, because I haven't really gotten a good read for this yet. Honestly, that really the only thing that I see is just story mechanism stuff. Ahsoka has force powers, so there has to be an antagonist with force powers to match. So, but I don't really see kind of what their whole story is and where they came from. And the whole point, I think maybe that'll be explained. If anything, they remind me a bit of the Inquisitors and Kenobi, and the way that they seem to be maybe hunting Ahsoka, the Inquisitors would be hunting Jedi down in the dark times. But they also have different colored blades on their lightsabers, right? It's a bit of an orangey
much more orange,
and that's to suggest potentially that they're not necessarily Sith characters, which is interesting. So some type of acolyte type thing is going on. So there's a lot of interesting lore stuff there. I hope they explain it. I hope they don't just show up and they're just people using the Force and lightsabers, and there's no explanation for where they came from or what their motivations are, because
I think
tends to do that sometimes, and it annoys me.
I think there will be, to an extent, because Baylan does say to Ahsoka in the trailer, Anakin always spoke highly of you. So he's got some connection to good old Anakin Skywalker. So
yeah, it sounds
there's history there.
It sounds like they're repurposed Jedi in some way. The talk about Anakin like that would suggest that they were Jedi. So perhaps Ahsoka is not the only gray Jedi out there, and the only difference is these ones are working for the Imperial remnants and Thrawn, as opposed to trying to help out the New Republic.
Yeah,
they could be trying to bring back the Jedi in a similar way, but they've fallen to the dark side, and they're just like, hey, this is the way we got to do it. And it's this whole thing. The trick of the dark side is just kind of believing your own hype and not seeing the error of your ways, and just being like, oh yeah, we're Jedi, but they say we are not Jedi specifically. So they're not really claiming to be Jedi. They're not trying to be Jedi. Maybe they're like, hey, we don't like the Jedi, we're going to do something else.
Well, one thing that's interesting about this, if we're going to do this really, really canonically and according to the lore of Star Wars, if you are an evil character with a lightsaber, your lightsaber has to be red, because that's how that works, because there are no red lightsaber crystals. They don't exist. the red lightsabers are when you have any other color of crystal, and then you kill a bunch of people in cold blood, and then the lightsaber crystal bleeds and turns red. So the fact that they don't have red lightsabers suggests that there has to be some type of morality to their actions. They have to have not killed innocent people if they're going to stay with that lore aspect to it. So that's really interesting. How can it be that these characters are potentially working for Thrawn or potentially hunting Jedi or Force users, and yet they haven't done things to corrupt their crystals and their sabers? That's interesting.
Here's an idea. Try this on for size. This idea, going off exactly what you're saying, Chris, and I've just thought of this as you explained that, of what if these, like Balin and Shin, like what you're saying, these kind of these gray users of the Force, but on the kind of other side of it. What if they are actually trying to figure out like the war between worlds and that kind of idea of going back in time and know of Anakin, because they're trying to go back and stop Anakin. They're trying to like stop Order 66 happening, but like not in like a for the Jedi kind of way, but for like some other kind of way, like maybe
in a Reva kind of way.
Yeah. And so like they're kind of, maybe they're against Palpatine. Here we go. Maybe they hated Palpatine or something. Oh, but Palpatine's gone now. But they're like for Thrawn, so they're trying to go back and like stop Palpatine and Anakin or something. That's why he like.
What if somehow Palpatine returned?
And like, and then does this kind of make sense? And
well, okay,
I like where you're going with this.
So here's the thing. It's one. He says, doesn't Balin say in the trailer? Is he the one that's saying that finding Thrawn is finding unlimited power or something like that?
Power beyond your dreams.
Power beyond your dreams. Are they suggesting that Thrawn is the key to finding the world between worlds, or is there something else, some other type of power that Thrawn has?
It's funny how we see that scene that we previously saw, and it's Ahsoka versus Balin, and they're in that world between worlds looking area, but really it looks to be just a hologram that the magistrate like activates, and they're all three there, and it's clearly not the world between worlds, it's on some planet, but like maybe it's some kind of holographic map or something like that, who knows. But it seems like they're maybe trying to find Thrawn, and seems to be key. Thrawn is the key to everything. Everyone's looking for Thrawn. It's not. That's one thing I took away from the trailer. Is it's not just the good guys looking for Thrawn. It's the bad guys too. The people that are in league with Thrawn. The Imperials don't know where they are. The Magistrate doesn't know they are. Balin doesn't know where he is. Like he's kind of out by himself, I guess, with Ezra.
Yeah, that was kind of Moff Gideon kind of made that point in Mando season 3, right? Like he's like, hey, like we're having the Shadow Council meetings. You guys are talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn's return. Where the hell is he? Why can't he be bothered to show up? And I'm sure there's a reason for that will be explored in this show. But yeah, it's almost like everybody's pinning, maybe all of the villains, quote unquote, are pinning their hopes on Thrawn to, remake the galaxy. They're disillusioned with the New Republic, so they want someone stronger, but they don't want Palpatine per se. They're not interested in another Emperor Palpatine. They want something else, something different, some other kind of strong man to come in.
But this guy's blue. He's not wrinkly. He's blue.
That's all you
well
know.
Yeah, I think you missed our little theory that when you were way done was saying that maybe that's what Balin, like the fact that Balin knows Anakin. I had the theory of maybe they're trying to unlock this like maybe time travel world between worlds to go back and like stop Anakin, like to try and kill Anakin and kill Palpatine, and that's why Balin like knows Ahsoka, and like maybe Balin has like hates Ahsoka for the reason of like, you didn't stop him, like you were his apprentice, you didn't like stop him or Palpatine or something.
And
I don't know.
she would have guilt because she maybe believes that she could have stopped him, that she had a choice, that she has that pivotal moment where she's like, she could have gone with Maul and maybe stopped Anakin, but she chose not to. She believed in Anakin, and that everything happened.
Yeah.
Crazy days, eh?
Yeah. It's wild.
Filoni, we're on to you. We know what you're doing, Filoni.
Do we know what he's doing?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I feel like he's pulling one over on us always, all the time. Of course, the other villain we get a quick, proper glimpse at is Grand Admiral Thrawn, as played by Lars Mikkelsen. If you saw the celebration, yeah, him. If you saw the celebration footage, either legitimately because you were there or through other means because you weren't, this is that same shot. But this is, our first real chance to, look at Thrawn properly in good quality, pause it, and watch it over and over again. What do we think of the look of the Grand Admiral in live action? We spent a lot of time talking about Hera and talking about Twi'leks. What do we think of Chiss?
It's going to be another adjustment period, I think, but I mean, he looks really good. I mean, as far as it goes, taking someone and giving them blue skin and red eyes, it's a striking image.
Oh, jeez.
There he is.
Look at that.
Looks good.
I reckon that his red eyes are like CGI. I reckon they're superimposed.
It wouldn't surprise
That's my
me.
theory.
I would imagine if they can do that. I say pretty easily they could do that. Probably not easy at all. It's probably taking thousands of hours to do it for VFX artists.
Mean, that being said, contacts are very easy to work with.
Over the whole eyeball, though, they're like, that hurts thinking about that.
You can do that,
man,
yeah. You can do whatever you want with it.
I remember hearing Ray Park tell stories about Darth Maul's contacts and how they weren't like, the contacts I wear, where you just put them in. And
you wear contacts?
That's the
what?
Breaking news: human being does human being things.
Not you though, Dom. Not you.
No.
I didn't expect it from you.
But they're not like the contacts that a person would wear. He described them as like you can't, they were like you had to use like your whole hand to put them in. And if you look at Maul in Phantom Menace, he never blinks. He never blinks because they were so painful to blink in that Ray Park wouldn't blink. And there's one moment, trivia time. There's one moment in Phantom Menace where Maul blinks. Does anybody know what it is?
When he dies?
When he gets cut in half.
Dies.
When he gets cut in half.
Oh, it was. Oh, I thought it was when he stopped Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of the time he's staring the whole way through. And it's terrifying. It's I love
how I say that like I haven't seen the movie. Oh, that's really scary.
I mean, it's part of his appeal, his allure is that he is scary in that way. But it's a practical reason more than anything else because it hurt like for the actor. Anyway, another character who's in this that we haven't touched on a whole heck of a lot or at all yet is Huyang, the droid.
Yes.
He's back.
He's back.
He's back in Doctor Who. He's back in Star Wars. Look at this guy just having a career renaissance. Not that he ever really went away. So, Chris, earlier you were talking about Ahsoka not really wanting to restart the Jedi Order. And yet here we have Huyang all through this trailer and the last saying it's time to begin again. It's time to begin again. It's almost like he's sort of like the angel on one shoulder for her, and her past is the devil on the other shoulder saying, "Don't do it. Don't do it." I don't know. What do you think of having this character back?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like I don't see where he came from and why he's here. I'm curious to see how Ahsoka and him got reacquainted. Like, what has he been doing this whole time, and why is he back now? And so, of course, the point of his character is he's the guide to Ilum. So you wonder, is there something going on with Ahsoka trying to find something on Ilum? Is there a specific reason why she needs him? We of course know that at some point the First Order is going to start setting up on Ilum, because that becomes Starkiller Base. So I wonder if they're going to kind of set the scene for that in some way, because that's really the only reason why I can think that Huyang would be related to the story is if there's something going on with Ilum.
Or maybe there is a part of this. Maybe there is
Ilum.
Ilum.
Maybe
what? When I was a kid, I only saw it spelled, and I thought it was a lum. I thought it was 2 L.
And Chris, how did you think Coruscant was pronounced for the longest time?
I can't even say it the way that I used to say it. What did I say? Coruscant? I don't know.
Coruscant. I remember all those Clone Wars episodes we did back in the day. I'd be like, yeah, then this scene was set on Coruscant. I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Look, I still say Tainted 4, even though apparently it's Tantive.
What did we see in this trailer? There was something vaguely Alderaanian looking.
Vaguely Alderaanian.
There's some Corvettes in the fleet shot, I think.
Yeah.
There's also Home 1, I think, is in there.
Yeah.
We're gonna get Admiral Akbar. Long last.
Finally.
We'll get him in there. He can say it's a trap, and then
he
he'll move
deserves it after what happened to him.
It's a fleet.
Oh, we don't have time for that.
It's a fleet. This whole time, I just have to interrupt one more time. I'm pretty sure. Thanks. I'm pretty sure. Are you drinking like a juice, Chris? Because it looks like a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I'm like, are you just speaking back?
I'm getting
Jack Daniels. This whole show. It's like, oh my god!
I'm really excited to see Akbar in the show. I hope we.
I love Ahsoka.
Tea, sweet tea, no sweet tea.
No, this is an abomination. This is something that would get me kicked out of Mississippi.
Unsweetened tea,
No
cold iced tea.
I mean, I looked for some sugar to put in it, but I couldn't find any, so I'm just suffering.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
someone who loves tea, Ezra Bridger. I don't know if he likes.
Spill that tea.
Segue, sure.
That's the best I could do.
Do it.
We get our first look. And first time hearing. I don't know. Ezra speaks in this trailer.
Ezra speaks.
Is he dead? Is he alive? I don't know. He's alive. Ben, let's go to you. What'd you think of our first look at live action Ezra?
I mean, it's not just because it looks like Ezra. Because he's basically wearing the same costume. I'm not sure that costume quite translates so well to live action. It's definitely this was made for animation kind of a costume, but he looks really good and it does sound like Ezra. Weirdly, it's it's a different voice, but again, it's these people did their homework and it does. You can listen to it and go like, yeah, that's Ezra talking. And I like that. I appreciate that. And it's going to be interesting because we're only seeing him in these holograms and like, how big of a role is he going to be? Where the hell is he all this time? Like, what's going on with Ezra? And is this part of because I need to go back and rewatch Rebels. Like, is this the part of the message that we get in Rebels? Does that match up, or is this a different message that things, is this a message that Sabine received after the fact from Ezra after he's been gone? I don't know.
Yeah.
Since you be gone. Yeah, sorry.
I can breathe.
They need to play that. See, okay. Yeah, this is like the conversation we had last week of like what pop songs can come into Star Wars. That song.
That's going to be the credit song for episode 1.
Yeah, there you go.
Incredible. All right. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. So I'll just throw it open to the floor. anything else anybody wants to bring up about this trailer?
Well,
I just want to know where the table is that you referred to earlier, and now where the floor is that you've also referred to.
It's
in my mind palace.
Mind palace. I mean, we kind of mentioned this before, but we just got to like appreciate a double Anakin mention in an Ahsoka trailer. It was just thrilling, wasn't it? I was just floored when they were like Anakin, and I'm like, oh, we know him. Oh,
we knew him.
And great
super cool
too, where after Balin mentions Anakin, you hear a Vader breath.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's what I love.
Sound design.
Like I like what I don't even know what you call that, but it's just like these elements that like tie together. It's like, oh, Star Wars. Like it's, you know, this character you love, a little symbol of this thing. You know what this is, and it's just presented in this delicious meal that is Star Wars, and it's just so good.
If they do not have Force Ghost Anakin in this show, I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah, it's got to happen, right?
It's happening. It's got to happen.
And I feel like saying that is jinxing it. Okay, I don't want to say it too loud. Okay, I'm like, oh, because I've done this before. I'm like, oh, we got the sequel trilogy coming up. You know, there's no way they'll go all 3 movies and not have Force Ghost Anakin show up. It's just would be ludicrous. Here we are. So, you know, I'm tempering my expectations.
Look, Hayden is almost certainly in this thing. So I can't imagine they cast him to play a different character. I think we're going to see
I'm Bananakin Star Killer.
We're gonna see Anakin in some way or another. Is it Force Ghost Anakin? Is it Anakin in a vision? Is it Anakin from an alternate dimension? I don't know. Like, you know, there's all sorts of things it could be, but you know, I think we're going to get a scene between Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka and Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. I think that's almost a given in this show, as close as anything can be that we haven't seen already. Anything else? Anything else from the trailer we want to mention in here? Love the look of it. Love the look of it. Love all the allusions to the world between worlds with the map, Ben, like you were talking about. And love, like, right at the beginning, there's that like statue carved into the wall that Ahsoka sees.
Should I hang up?
Oh my god!
We're just hearing boom, boom.
That's great.
I don't think I'm gonna get an answer.
Why the hell are you on the phone? I
don't think I'm gonna get an answer. I'll just.
I was wondering if y'all could hear it or not.
We can hear it. We can hear it.
It sounds like it's like there's like a what is it, like an SOS code from like the submarine.
Yeah,
Morse
code. Yeah.
Now I know what that sounds like.
There it is. There it is. All right. I think you know, obviously it's not going to be the last time we talk about the Ahsoka trailer or the Ahsoka show and the lead up to it. So I'm sure we'll return to anything we've missed in this discussion in a future discussion. But yeah, pretty amazing trailer, no about a doubt it. Let's touch on a couple of other things. One that is still very Ahsoka related. Have you guys seen there's going to be a new Ghost Lego set coming out? That's pretty cool. It's the Ghost.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Phantom 2, and yeah, it's really cool. And it comes with all these sweet minifigures like First Officer Hawkins, Lieutenant Rhea, General Hera Syndulla, Chopper, and Jason Syndulla.
Huh.
Oh, Jason Syndulla. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. Literally since I think the finale of Rebels. I don't think that name's
City Bingo.
Oh boy.
I'm excited for this. I'm excited to see this character brought into the story. And you know, again, going back to the Ahsoka training Sabine thing, maybe Ahsoka training Sabine was meant to be practice to train Jason. Didn't go well. She said, and she noped out of there.
We cannot have a Jason being trained in the way of the Force. I don't think this is going to go well.
It's even spelled the same way. It's even spelled the same way. It's weird. But I think the biggest surprise here, the thing that really shook the internet to its core, brown hair, not green hair.
Yeah.
Maybe he grew out of it.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
he's
just
older
a
now.
phase.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Or
This
maybe
is I don't.
maybe he's like Sabine, where he changes his hair all the time.
That's the theory. I don't know who said it first, but people were saying that maybe Sabine just helps him color his hair sometimes, and he's in between styles, or maybe brown is his color right now.
He hasn't had a chance to visit Auntie Sabine in a little while, and so
Think about it though, for like a kid, like you'd want to color your hair to match your mom's hair. Like that's kind of cute, right?
I think I would assume.
Yeah, I think that's a thing you grow out of pretty quickly.
How old is he? Like 5? I don't know.
How many years after Rebels is this? 5?
This is
8?
Well, they said it was the same time as Mando, didn't they?
Yeah, so it's been what, 8?
So it's like
5 or 6 years,
something like that. So
I don't know. Ask
like
Filoni
10
and ask Favreau and divide it by 5, and you'll get the answer maybe.
Good stuff. Anyways, I think this opens the door for we talk about an Anakin cameo, maybe a Kanan cameo, played by Freddie Prinze Jr. Please. Just because
he's kind of unhinged at the moment, but he does look like Kanan.
I like to think that Freddie is just like trolling us because he's like his most recent comments, like I don't want to do it. It keeps cheapening the character. Blah 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 blah. Like he's very grumpy about it.
But that's what people say when they've done it and they're trying to throw you off the scent. If they haven't done it, that's when they go, yeah, I'd kind of be interested in doing it again. That'd be kind of fun. But when they've done it, that's when they're like, no, why would I do that? Why would I be interested in doing such a thing?
Man.
All right, moving away from the Ahsoka series, let's take a quick moment and shout out the supremely talented makers of Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Mandalorian Season 3 for all of their Emmy nominations. This includes for Andor, Outstanding Drama Series, which is like sort of like the best picture, Outstanding Original Main Theme Music, Outstanding Cinematography for a series 1 hour for Rix Road and Damian Garcia, Outstanding Directing for a drama series, Rix Road, Benjamin Caron. Outstanding music composition for a series, Rix Road, Nicholas Bertel. They're really going all in on Rix Road here. Outstanding sound editing for a comedy or drama series, because Andor famously hilarious. 1 hour for The Eye. Outstanding special visual effects in a season or movie, and outstanding writing for a drama series, One Way Out with Beau Willimont. That one definitely very well deserved. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series, Outstanding Fantasy / Sci-Fi Costumes for Part 1. I don't know if that's the one I would have gone with. Might have gone with like one of the ones on Dayu. But anyways, Outstanding Picture Editing for a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie for Part 6. Outstanding Sound Editing for a Limited or Anthology Series, Movie, or Special, Part 6. And Outstanding Sound Mixing for a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie, Part 6. And The Mandalorian Season 3, Outstanding Cinematography for a series half hour. Interesting that Mandalorian they put in the half hour category for Chapter 20. Outstanding Fantasy Sci-Fi Costumes for Chapter 22, going up against Obi-Wan Kenobi. Outstanding Period and or Character Hairstyling, because Mandalorian, famously a period piece, for Chapter 19.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
Was it hairstyling?
Yep.
Like 90% of the characters are in helmets. What the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell?
That's how
like
good
no one with hair.
We can't see Pedro's hair, but it's probably
it's
good
because
looking.
of Bo-Katan. It's the one person with hair, which Bo-Katan when she like upgraded her hair from season 2. That's why.
There we go. Outstanding period and or character makeup, non-prosthetic for Chapter 22. Outstanding sound editing for a comedy or drama series, Chapter 24. Mandalorian a bit more funny. I'll give him that. Outstanding sound mixing for a comedy or drama series, half hour, and animation for Chapter 24. Outstanding special visual effects in a season or movie. Outstanding stunt coordination for a drama series, limited or anthology series or movie. Definitely, I think would be well deserved there. And outstanding stunt performance for Chapter 24, The Return. So congratulations to the cast and crews of Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Mandalorian for these well-deserved awards. Hopefully you'll get a chance to be doing more of that soon once all the strikes are done. Speaking of which, Bob Iger, Bobby I, the savior, the return of this guy to lead Disney out of the era. Just saw the lower third that Ben created for this. Bob Iger extends contract, talks crazy. I couldn't
put the whole thing in there. Okay, it had to be condensed, and that's an accurate description.
That's a good, that is accurate.
So Iger, of course, returned to his role as CEO of Disney, replacing Bob Chapek last year, and it was only meant to be like a 3-year thing, but it's actually going to be more like a 5-year thing because he's been extended through 2026. And immediately after signing this or announcing that he had signed this extension, he decided to go and give an interview where he spoke about the ongoing WGA strike, so the writers' strike, and I don't know if it's technically started yet, but it's starting very, very soon. The SAG-AFTRA, the actors' strike that's about to happen. And look, Bob Iger is the CEO of a production studio, so I think it should be no surprise where his loyalties lie. And I think he kind of unmasked himself with what he's about to say, and maybe new Bob, like I said off the top, new Bob, same as the old Bob. He says it's very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the changes we're facing, the recovery from COVID, which is ongoing. It's not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add to that disruption. I understand that any labor organizations desire to work on behalf of its members to get the most compensation and be compensated fairly based off the value that they deliver. We managed as an industry to negotiate a very good deal with the Directors Guild that reflects the value that the directors contribute to this great business. We wanted to do the same thing with the writers, and we'd like to do the same thing with the actors. There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic, and they're adding to the set of challenges that this business is already facing that is quite frankly very disruptive. End quote. Now, I meant to look up how much money Bob Iger made last year.
25
plenty of people have been tweeting
25 million. Yeah. And how much money did the Walt Disney Company make last year? Does anybody know that off the top of their heads? I know it was a down year, quote unquote.
I mean, it was in the tens of billions.
Tens of billions of dollars. Now, I don't know if we could find this out, and I don't know if he'd be willing to share it, but I'd love to ask Emmy-nominated writer Beau Willimon, who wrote One Way Out, the one that they've put up for an Emmy, for an award. They've said this episode is so good. It's one of the best episodes of television all year, one of the best written episodes of television. I'd like to know the difference between what Bob makes and what Beau makes. And maybe it's unfair to to use Beau as an example, but I'm just going to do that because it's a Star Wars one. It's a very prominent one. Iger, again, his loyalties are very clear. He's in it for the shareholders. He's in it to make money, yada, yada, yada. But what the writers are asking for and what the actors are asking for is a drop in the bucket compared to what Disney makes, what Bob is going to make, what all of them are going to make. And so to hear him come out and say that and try and, deflect all the blame for what's going on onto the people that are striking and not the people who have all the money in the world and could very easily give these guys exactly what they want and then some and not have it really affect their day-to-day lives it's not surprising because that's the world we live in. But Bob Iger came in as the great savior. And I think it's clear that maybe he's not, or who is he saving? Who is he out for? It ain't the writers, it ain't the actors.
For the record, Disney's annual gross profit for the year of 2022 was $28.321 billion.
Oh, I've got that in my couch cushions. Oh, what a small potatoes.
I also
the amount of money.
I also like the interviewer like straight up asked him like, what's I think he said what's unrealistic or what's unreasonable about their demands. He's like, I can't answer that. I'm like, well, you can't answer that. Like, why, Bob? Why? Explain yourself.
Yeah. And also this comes like this interview comes like a day after there's that story in Deadline about how it's basically the plan of the studios to starve the writers out and, you know, make everybody in that union go broke so that they're desperate enough to go back to the negotiating table and just take whatever shit deal the studios are willing to give them. It's yeah. It's not great. It's not great, Bob. Not great.
This is start calling him Emperor Bob, I think. Supreme Leader Bob.
I think he's lost he's lost the Bob title. I think we should just call him Iger from now on. Because the whole thing with Disney and the first name thing is they're all supposed to be friends, they're all supposed to be family, but he ain't acting like it. So he's Iger, as far as I'm concerned.
Iger.
Yeah. What a pointless protest that would be on my part. I'm gonna call you by your last name instead of your first name. That'll stick it to you. Anyway, I should probably actually wanted to do something. Should do what the writers are doing. All right, we'll move off of that and get on to some more fun things. But we shouldn't ignore the less fun things either, because Ben, as you alluded to off the top, we got Ahsoka, got Skeleton Crew. Then who knows after that? They've shot a lot of Acolyte.
I mean,
they shot a lot of Andor.
But are they completely finished with Skeleton Crew? Have they done all the ADR, everything they need to do?
Yeah,
that's a good question, because they
can't
now. They can't get Jude Law back in the studio to finish it out. They can't do that now.
Yeah, I am very fascinated just at what points, because we really only kind of guess at what points the projects are at. But you're so right. It's like, how much of this is finished? Are we getting this show on, when they say December? It's very, very dicey.
Will we see it? Will we not? All right. Before we move on to our next segment, Hannah, I understand you're leaving. You're leaving us.
I am. I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Can't stand it anymore. I'm departing. No, but this has been a great discussion, great chat. Such a good time. But good times. Enjoy the rest of the show. Enjoy the SWU. I'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Everybody make sure you're tuning in to the Raeside for more content, and stick around for Ask WU, which is apparently the new segment we're doing here.
SWU.
Yeah. Thanks, Anna.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right, let's get to Ask the SWU. This is the part of the show where we turn things over to the listener, and we discuss what you want us to discuss via super chats, via Discord messages, all that good stuff. And we'll kick things off, as we so frequently do, with a super chat from one Joel Davis. Joel says, how much of Thrawn do you think will we see in this series? What episode do you think he'll first appear in?
Now, I can see a couple things here. Yeah. Like, I can see either it being like the last scene of episode 2, and that's why they were giving us 2 episodes at the beginning, or like they do a lot with like big villains in Star Wars shows, it might be like halfway through 4.
Yeah. I had literally the exact same thought and the exact same answer. Like, I think that shot that we see in the trailer is from episode 2. I think that's somewhere in that second episode. But this is a Mandoverse show.
Yeah.
And, Cad Bane didn't show up till the second last episode of Book of Boba Fett. Moff Gideon didn't show up until the second last episode of both season 1 and season 3. And in season 2, where he showed up early, it was like episode 3 or 4. Like it was relatively decently into the season. So now those shows were much more Jon Favreau vehicles, whereas this is a Dave Filoni vehicle. So I think we'll see we'll have a much clearer picture after this show where those two think alike in their story structures and where they differ. And this might be one of them. But if I were betting, I mean, I wouldn't bet a lot on it. Like, I wouldn't bet everything I own. I wouldn't bet $28 billion on it. But I maybe bet $2 that he shows up in episode 2. That'd be my.
I say at the earliest, the end of episode 2. I feel like they're really going to continue to play with this "Where's Thrawn" thing for as long as they can. I think they've been building it up over multiple seasons of Mandalorian, and they're coming into this. And, you know, I suspected Thrawn was going to show up at the end of Mandalorian season 3, and that obviously did not happen. I think now that we've really been starved of him and he's been talked about so much, I think now is like, okay, we're getting the first episode and he'll be talked about a lot. We won't see him. Get the second episode. Maybe we'll see him for a bit and then he'll go away. And then he'll be because we're assuming he'll be kind of the main antagonist of this show, but he can't it can't be they find him and they kill him at the end of this episode, this series. Like, he's going to be the big bad for multiple series and probably a movie too. So they can't overuse him in Ahsoka. They can kind of have him have a presence. He's there. He's threatening, but he can't be there too much. We can't, too much of the blue man may be a good thing or not a good thing.
Yeah. Used sparingly, perhaps. All right, let's go to Discord. This question comes from Vlad Sander. They write, do you think that Ezra will return by the end of the series? Yes, we saw him in hologram form, but I mean Ezra himself reunited with Sabine. Will we see the two rebels back together again?
I think that's the point of the show. I think that's what it's leading up to.
Yeah. I have a horrible feeling that even though we'll get this reunion, one of those two ain't making it out of the series.
Ooh.
And
yeah,
in my head, I can make compelling reasons for why it shouldn't be either of them. But I kind of feel like one of them is going to go down. Kind of feel that way. It would suck to spend all this time looking for Ezra, wondering where he is, only to have his return end in his demise. That would kind of be that would maybe not be the greatest storytelling. But then, like, Sabine is also a character that can sort of go between the shows and bring characters together. She's a Mandalorian, but she's starting in this show, not in the Mandalorian. She has connections to the Jedi, but she also has a deep connection to Mandalore and Bo-Katan. Like, this is a character that can bring people together in this sort of larger story. And so it would kind of suck to have her be killed off and to lose the potential to utilize her in that way in the story. And it would, both of those, and it also, without knowing how it, in just inventing a way it could happen, it might also feel like fridging if you killed off Sabine. Like, there's all sorts of like different like reasons not to kill either of them. And so in some ways I think, okay, maybe they just won't kill either of them. But also, like, just the stakes feel very real already. And I feel like that's just in the trailers. And I feel like in the show, they're going to want to heighten them some more. And also, that might be early on in the show, they want to heighten them. But also maybe towards the end, like, we stopped Thrawn at a price. And he is still deeply, deeply threatening and deeply terrifying.
I would have to assume that Thrawn is going to be the main villain of the Dave Filoni movie.
Yeah.
Like, that makes sense. I don't think, they were setting up maybe something about Mandalore to be the thing, but all the stuff that has occurred in Mandalorian season 3, that doesn't seem to be the main story plot anymore. They kind of wrapped that up at the end of the Mandalorian season 3. So that being said, you've got to build up that character for multiple seasons of TV shows leading up to this movie. And what better way to do that than have him actually win a lot? And they have to, because you know what? I don't like weak Star Wars villains. There's too many of them. There's too many Star Wars villains that are defeated by the end of one season of a show, and I hate that. We need somebody like Palpatine, who's difficult to defeat, who would be around for years.
Yeah,
and be.
It's not like Palpatine ever gets defeated and then comes back again. It's not like that ever happens.
I mean, that makes him a stronger character. I'd say what you want about the smoothness of the writing of that, but I mean that just like Darth Maul, like that makes him, gives longevity to the character. So I think having Thrawn kill some important people and not lose for a bit is a good idea. That's what I want to see.
Maybe it's Hera. Maybe Hera's the one to go, because she's the mentor figure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be Ahsoka. I just really
Ahsoka cannot die.
Yeah.
Ahsoka is not allowed to die.
Contractually.
Like, they've gone through enough to keep her alive and bend things around to keep her alive that it's like, at this point, if it was going to happen, it would have happened a long time ago. It's not going to happen.
And it makes it more complicated when you've already had a death fake out. You've already had we already mourned Ahsoka. So if you actually kill her off, then it's going to be like, well, she's coming back. Like, well, just wait for Filoni to come out on stage with an Ahsoka Lives t-shirt on, and she'll be back. So, like, we don't believe it.
There's a reason why. The reason Den in the comments still Den's gonna like this. So the reason why Ahsoka can't die is because when they introduced her to the daughter on Mortis, they opened the door to this concept that Ahsoka is a representation of the light side of the Force, which I still think is a thing. Like, I know that, like, it's semantic and doesn't technically mean anything, but I still look at the little clue that the predecessor to Ahsoka, the Twi'lek youngling in Attack of the Clones, was called Ashla, which is the word for the light side of the Force, just like Bogan is the word for the dark side of the Force. So I feel like Ahsoka is a symbolic character that represents a force, a concept. And that's why she can't necessarily die. She can transcend, but she can't die. Very much how Gandalf can't die. He just comes back. He goes from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. Now Ahsoka is Ahsoka the White. She's a god, basically. She's the closest thing to a demigod in Star Wars, similar to maybe the Bendu.
I think when all is said and all is done with Ahsoka through these stories, it wouldn't surprise me if she winds up on Mortis as some kind of, taking the place of the daughter.
Yeah. They've got to do that. It would make no sense to not do that. Otherwise, all that stuff was pointless.
Yeah.
And why would you do that?
We've been speculating about Ahsoka's fate for more than a decade now. Like,
there's literally a song called "The Fate of Ahsoka."
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah, I shout out High Adventure.
Yeah, so like this stuff's been around for a long time, long before she ever, died in Rebels and showed up in Mandalorian and stuff like that. Like, we've been like, where can she go? She wasn't in Revenge of the Sith, so she has to die, right? No, that's not how it works. And that was always ultimately the most boring option, was you just kill her off. Just kill her off. Characters don't always have to die, or they, at the very least, you can have a situation where, she's taken off and it means something more than her just sacrificing herself. And we've seen that done 1,000 times now in Star Wars. Not that it's not powerful and not that it couldn't be done right, but I think Ahsoka is an interesting enough character that deserves a little bit more thought than that. I think Filoni obviously has a lot more than mind than just her getting stabbed by a lightsaber and dying.
Yeah, I agree. Also, while you guys were talking, I convinced myself that Hera's going to die, so now I'm sad. She's the mentor.
I don't
she's
think
the mentor. She's the mentor, and she's the one, other than Ahsoka, who seems to be most on the ball and most aware that bad things are happening and that they involve Thrawn. And that usually spells death for a character. And as you guys have just laid out, can't be Ahsoka. Could be Hera. I think Hera's going to die.
The quote unquote the kids are safe. I don't think they would ever. I don't think we'll see Ezra or Sabine bite it. And I don't think I agree that I don't think Ahsoka is in the Deadpool either. But I think Hera is one. I think after a while, I don't think it's going to happen in Ahsoka, but it could be a climactic sacrifice at the end of the Dave Filoni movie, maybe.
It'd be interesting. Would be interesting. Next up, let's go to another super chat from Joel. Joel says, stop clicking. You guys stop clicking. I'm clicking. I'm doing this part. I'll bring up the graphics.
If I was clicking, you'd be saying less.
Yeah. Joel writes and says, my big question for Ahsoka is, why do force-wielding Darksiders think that Thrawn can offer them to paraphrase, unlimited power? Think Thrawn has a force MacGuffin device?
That was my question earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to this, and I'm confused as well. I don't know what part of the plot Thrawn has to do with that. It doesn't make sense to me at the moment.
Yeah. Which is, when you're talking about a trailer, is exciting. Because that means there's something to uncover. It's less exciting when the plot is confusing after the story has come out.
Okay, so
that means there's a problem.
So what's interesting here is I'm trying to think about the Thrawn books that are no longer, canon, and if they're going to pull things out of them. Now, it seems like Favreau and Filoni have pulled all the cloning stuff out into the Gideon storyline. Gideon cloning himself, and then all those clones getting killed before they can even fight. Why would you do that? But anyway, that was a very, very similar to the plot of the Thrawn books, because that's what Thrawn was out there doing, was cloning and trying to make all that stuff. But the one that they haven't brought in yet is the Isilamir. Which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that's been brought into new canon yet.
Not that I'm aware of.
Even as perhaps has it been brought into the paper canon. I've not read all of the new Thrawn books, so I don't know for sure. But I haven't heard anything about it. So perhaps this Force MacGuffin device that Joel is referring to is something that blocks the Force. So that now that brings up a good question. Why would Force wielders want something that blocks the Force? Maybe they can use it on somebody else and not themselves. Or maybe they can somehow make themselves immune to Force attacks but still be able to use their own. I'm not exactly sure the mechanics of it, but that's one thing. That's the only thing I can think of, is that's the one little piece of canon, old canon, that hasn't, been really utilized yet. So I wonder about that.
There's that shot in the trailer of Sabine, and she has her hand out like she was trying to use the Force, and Shin says to her, "You have no power." And that could be because Sabine's not Force sensitive, or could be that Sabine is Force sensitive and there's something that's blocking her connection, be it the Salamir or something else.
Oh my God, she's had an Salamiri on her back this whole time she didn't know about.
Yeah. Now, I think most likely whatever Thrawn's up to involves the world between worlds. It involves some kind of unlimited power in that way.
Right.
And that might be enticing. We know Palpatine wanted that. So that was enticing to Darksiders there. So maybe it's more than just a special trinket that is the Force. It's this, Thrawn wants to dominate reality as we know it, or maybe he wants access to that for some other reason. You know, that there was always the theory in the old Legends books that Thrawn, his aims weren't really to, you know, subjugate the galaxy, but was to be ready for the Yuuzhan Vong that were coming. And so maybe Thrawn is concerned about something else that's out there and wants to have a look at it, or wants to try and use the world between worlds to stop it.
If
that's a
they
possibility as
make
well.
if they make the Yuuzhan Vong the villains of the Rey movie, I will be very happy.
I've said about before about the Rey movie. Like, I understand that it's going to be standalone ish, but I want that ish part to be leaving the door open for a more expansive story post sequel trilogy.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's the Vong necessarily, but something along the lines of the Vong, in the sense that they're a threat we have never seen before.
Yeah.
As unlike any of the other threats from any of the other Star Wars up until this point. It's not the Empire, it's not the Sith or the Dark Side or something. Like, it's something else. Is exciting. And yeah, just like they, you know, use Thrawn to potentially backwards, you know, through retcons and stuff, establish the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, that was coming. Maybe they can use him to allude to something more, because I think, you know, the fact that Dave is making a Star Wars movie, I don't think it's a one and done thing. I don't think it's like, well, Dave, you wrap up this story. Congratulations, sir. We'll wrap it up and then we'll get you to go back to television. Go back to your little sandbox, your corner of the sandbox. I have a feeling Dave's going to be very involved in everything going forward, including movies in all eras of Star Wars.
The thing with like this era in particular, where we're calling the Mandoverse, like, it's still, they can only take it so far in regard to, like, we're gonna build up to a movie, and I'm assuming the movie will not be the end. There will probably be more shows, but like, they can't keep like, oh, here's the Empire for the 8th time. Like, they have to do something different. Eventually, they're gonna run out of time, and I think Lucasfilm has had some really great success with these interconnected kind of eras of storytelling. You have the High Republic now, you have the Mandoverse now. I hope in 10 years or even less time, we are in the post Rise of Skywalker era, where it's some new threat. It's, you know, Rey's involved, the old characters are maybe there, but maybe it's some new characters too. And it's just moving forward with the timeline and doing something different. And there's TV shows and movies and whatever else they could do, books, comics, etc. And, you know, something like the Vong, or just the Vong, they could do it and it would work, I think.
I mean, Dave nearly brought the Vong into Clone Wars. That was a concept for season 7 or 8. There would have been an episode or 2.
And I feel like Star Wars has to do that. It has to do something drastically different with like the villains, because I know the Empire is great villains, but you really have to put that thing to bed now, because eventually, because we had it with the First Order. Now we're going back to it with the Mandoverse, and the Empire is obviously going to be the big bad. And I'm fine with it. It's great. But eventually it's going to get old. And for the established, like, the Empire again, somehow the Empire returned again. Like, it gets old.
I mean, you can continue to tell stories set in the Imperial era that involve the Empire. Like, that's the beauty of Star Wars.
That's always going to be. They're always going to be that. There's always going to be another story like Andor or Obi-Wan Kenobi, something set in that era with a new character. Look, we're getting Star Wars Outlaws. The Empire's the villains again. But it's fine, okay? It's fine. But I think while they're doing that, need to come up with new ideas, new villains, new concepts that can push Star Wars forward, so that in 20 years we can be like, oh God, it's the Vong again. They're the villains again. Jeez, somehow the Vong returned.
Thank you for that, Joel. All right, next up, we've got a question from Lucky Lego. This comes from the Discord. They write, will Ezra and Sabine be love interests if actually reunited, or will they find other love interests?
There's a bit of that, a little tiny bit of that in Rebels, so who knows?
It was definitely Ezra had a crush on Sabine through the first season, and I think they came to respect each other as warriors, as I think by the end it was much more of a brother-sister relationship, or just good friends.
This is Star Wars, Dominic.
Yeah, well, a non-Star Wars, non-Game of Thrones brother-sister relationship. So I think I think that's likely where the characters will be, but that's one thing the Mandoverse and a lot of these Star Wars shows has been sorely lacking is a love story. You get it a little bit in Andor with Cassian and Bix. Why was I blanking on her name? Yeah, so you get it a bit there, but it's not super prominent in that show, and it's almost entirely absent from the Mandoverse. Like there's
Disney's gotta. Oh, let's get though. Disney's gotta come back to it at some point, because they've course corrected, overcorrected on that. Because Disney used to be all about love stories. That was the point of Disney, almost.
Right.
And all the love fairy tales that made the company. And so the last 10 to 15 years have been very focused on, let's not have our identity be about romantic stories. And it's been very, very clear that that's been the point of it. And at some point you got to think that it's going to balance out a little bit. I mean, it already kind of has started with Little Mermaid, for example. They did Little Mermaid as a love story instead of subverting that one like they did with Maleficent. So they got it. It's got to come around at some point. We got to get more of those.
And Star Wars is kind of in the same boat. The prequels were very much a love story between Anakin and Padme, and that was an element that was not always super well received of those movies. And I remember in the early days of Episode 7, not even The Force Awakens, but Episode 7 being a thing. I remember J.J. Abrams said something about, that they were considering a love story for that movie. And I remember putting up an article back when we did articles on our website about this. And reading the comments, people were like, no, they can't. Star Wars has already tried to be a love story and it was terrible. Don't do it again. All the man babies losing their minds. And so, I feel like there's been a little bit of a feeling, much in the same way that they shied away from doing anything prequel related for quite some time, of shying away from doing another love story because everybody just thinks, Star Wars love stories are where somebody says, I don't like sand as a pickup line.
That confuses me, because it's like the sequels are very much sequels to the original trilogy, not sequels to the prequel trilogy. And the love story between Han and Leia is one of the most well-written love stories in that genre, and most respected love stories in that genre. And so I'm kind of confused as to why they would let the prequels dictate what they would do in the sequels. I think
it's the same reason everything in every Force Awakens behind the scenes featurette said, we're doing practical effects. We're doing
but that would put it. I know, but if they're trying to do the anti-prequel, there's a love story in the prequels and in the original trilogy. So it's not anti-prequel to cut the love story out.
They weren't doing an anti-prequel. They were doing an anti-prequel reaction. And so everything that people said they didn't like about the prequels, they went out of their way to, at the very least, say they were doing the opposite in the sequels.
There was never any logic to any of it. It was all lip service. It was, just the whole thing about we're using practical effects here. There was more practical effects in the prequels than there was in the original trilogy. That is a fact. Okay, that's a proven fact.
Yeah,
but more practical effects in the prequels than the
Disney
sequels.
Disney looked at something going we have to bring the audience back, so we got to tell them what they want to hear and win everyone back. And then just the idea of Star Wars can't do love stories because the last one you saw wasn't great. So
I think it has more to do with Disney. I think
absolutely.
If Lucasfilm was independently doing the sequels, there would definitely be a love story, 100%.
I honestly, not with J.J. Abrams at the helm. I don't think so.
I don't know if George Lucas would have picked JJ to do that.
That's a good question. That's a
He
fair.
would have probably done it himself.
Yeah.
He probably would have directed it himself, and it would have probably had a love story in it. But I think it's more to do with the fact that, again, Disney wanted to no longer be branded around romance, and that was a change that occurred prior to that.
I think that certainly probably factors into it, but I think
I would say that's a bigger factor. Like,
I think when it came to making Star Wars, they were responding to the Star Wars audience and the Star Wars discourse, quote unquote.
Yes,
more than they were responding to, more than they were interested in saying Star Wars is also following the same edict that we've set for ourselves for all of our things. I think if Star Wars fans loved a love story, if the Anakin Padme stuff was deeply, enjoyed and rooted, there would have been at least more of it suggested in 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, I completely disagree with you on that one. That's not my take on it at all.
No, well, we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But I do think this is an element that needs to be brought back in.
I agree with that too. Yeah, it's definitely, there are ways to bring it back where it makes sense and it's kind of a bit modernized. Like, that's one of the things that we haven't necessarily seen is they've gotten away from the idea of like a love story being like the way that a story concludes. And because it's like you have this idea of a fairy tale, this idea that one of the fairy tale structures is you end up with two characters falling in love and then living happily ever after at the end. And that's like this storytelling structure that's existed for hundreds, probably thousands of years. And so they've gotten away from that by just getting rid of it completely and being like, okay, now the characters are just friends at the end, and their friendship that they've found. Like, you have the picture of Poe and Rey and Finn hugging at the end and stuff like that. Like, that's the replacement for the love story ending. So now what they need to do is they need to figure out how to involve love stories in ways where they happen, it's realistic, but at the same time, it's not like the whole story revolves around it. And they've done it a little bit by having romantic situations, like the situation with Zori and Poe, the situation with Bix and Cassian, where there's been these romantic situations that have happened, but the whole story hasn't revolved around it. So it'll be interesting to see them incorporate that more in, but do it probably in a way where it's like it's not like the whole point is like it's not an ending for the characters. It's not like how things end in the Fanboys movie or how things end in Dungeons and Dragons.
Andor is definitely a step in the right direction, not just with the kind of the on again, off again relationship with Bix and Cassian. I mean, we have Vel and Cinta, who is also like great representation here with having them, but also having a love story that's, yes, very subtle, but still there, still very much there. You can't ignore it.
It's part
of
it, yeah.
And having it be very much a part of the story of just like, these are these characters. These characters are going through something and it's affecting their lives and they're trying to be together, but they're being pulled apart by this. They have different points of view on how to deal with this war and this rebellion, all this kind of stuff. It's great writing. I'm all in, like going like, let's go further than we've ever gone before. Let's do a Lost Stars one where it actually is a love story. It is a romance
where that's
movie
the point
about things. But I think even going back to, if you just take the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, I think you could argue that romance has always been a fundamental part of Star Wars from the beginning. Obviously, Anakin and Padme were destined to be together, but going back to the original trilogy, Leia and Han, they were sparks in A New Hope, and then those sparks turned into stuff in Empire Strikes Back for the Jedi. So like that stuff's always been there from the get-go. It's something that George obviously cared about. He wanted it to be part of the story. So why can't we have that again? I think they need to commit to something. They need to say, okay, we're planning this arc and this movie, and these characters are going to be blatantly together.
There are people in Star Wars. Where do people come from? That's all I'm gonna say.
Ain't nobody making babies in the sequel trilogy, I tell you that much.
Where did they come from?
Oh man. All right. I don't know if we answered that question, but there certainly was a discussion.
There's instead of the porgs, it's the storgs.
That's where babies come from. Is a bunch of porgs. Fly them in and drop them off.
There you go.
In the night.
We solved the mystery.
Solve the mystery. Another super chat from Joel. Joel writes, the thing about Mon Mothma is that her biggest flaw is being overly cautious and too devoted to institutions for her own good.
Yeah.
That's
one reading of it, I think.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Again, we look at that scene in Rogue One. I think she wanted to fight, and she was happy to let the fighting start and to join it once it had already started. So it's just a matter of how much pushing does it take to get her to stray from that.
To deconstruct what Joel's saying here, I think for one, cautious, yes. I think she in Andor, she's like, she wants to make a better galaxy. She wants to fight the Empire, but she wants to do it cautiously. She doesn't want to go the Luthen route or the Saw Gerrera route. She's wanting to do this the right way, find the middle ground. She's being cautious. And I'm assuming in the sequel trilogy era, she's also trying to be cautious in regards to, she's not turning a blind eye and going like, oh, I don't see no Empire. It's like, no, there's probably more to it than that politically that she's thinking, or maybe she is just a blind politician. I don't know. We'll find out. But
there's probably people around her who are turning the blind eye saying, I don't see no Empire.
But like also devoted to institutions. She is in Andor still devoted to the institution of maybe there's some way we can salvage this. I'm going to the Senate. I'm going to speak to the Senate. There's nobody in the Senate. There's nobody there, but she's still giving a speech. Like, I have to keep this going, and I have to try to believe in some semblance of democracy in the face of overwhelming fascism.
Yeah, it's true. That was a great speech, Ben.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to undercut that with this other super chat from Joel, who says, we stand Morgan Elsbeth, a.k.a. Ben's GF. LOL.
See, I didn't even bring it up. I was holding myself back. I was trying not to bring it up, but here we go. She's in the trailer. I could barely contain myself, okay? Morgan Elsbeth's back. Biggest hype for the whole thing. Excited.
All
My
right.
girl.
All right. Another one from Discord. This one comes from Kajira Creations. She writes, would y'all think Lux Bonteri could make an appearance in the Ahsoka show?
Speaking of the romance.
Yeah, exactly. He did make a return in the Battlefront novel, Inferno Squad, and has since been married with a stepdaughter, I think. I wonder if his and Ahsoka's reunion would be awkward or not. I don't know, but I just want to hear your thoughts on how a Lux and Ahsoka reunion would be like. Even to this day, I have a soft spot for Lux Ahsoka, but sad to see that it never got extended since the Onderon arc of season 5 of the Clone Wars. I just want to say, I once asked Ashley Eckstein about Lux Ahsoka in an interview, and she laughed in my face.
Yeah, Lux has served his purpose in the plot. Unfortunately, he was not necessarily a character foil for Ahsoka, but more a plot foil for the war between the Separatists and the Republic. And so now that war is over, there's really no point for his character to do anything, because it was just to illustrate how the people that actually comprised the Confederacy of Independent Systems wasn't merely, mindless automatons or psychopathic acolytes.
But it would be interesting to get the Separatist perspective on the New Republic. He could be that guy. We got a tiny little bit in the Jack Black Lizzo episode.
Yeah,
with, Christopher Lloyd being the Count Dooku true believer.
Saw Gerrera is really that character. Like, it would be kind of just retreading the same ground that they have with Saw to have. Yeah.
But on the New Republic, I mean, like in this era.
Yeah.
Be kind of, I think I don't know if that's strictly like necessary. It's maybe not like the top of my priority lists for things I want to see, but I do think it would be kind of interesting to see someone who was involved in a movement against the Republic because of its corruption. What do they think of this New Republic that, while good intentioned, has shown itself to be a little bit feckless, or more than a little bit feckless?
Incompetent. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. I feel like they would probably turn to new characters to illustrate that. Probably, maybe.
Most, I mean, it most likely, but I don't know. Every now and again, it's fun to bring one of the old ones back. One of the old ones you're not
I
expecting.
don't know, but then I don't know how George Lucas and Dave Filoni thought that they could do that whole thing and then not have the fans be constantly interested in it forever. Because talking about love and romance, Ahsoka, very interestingly, has not interfaced much with this.
No.
And there was a bit of it there with Lux. So I think that's interesting. Now, I believe there was, of course, one of the greatest tragedies in Star Wars, which is their original kind of probably weird attempt at shipping Han Solo and Ahsoka, or whatever the heck they were going to do. Yeah. That of course, it correctly changed to the Nix Okami concept, which that would have done that. That would have told that Ahsoka romance story in a much more, adult way, that, the mature way that the Von Terry stuff wouldn't have developed it to.
The Bon Terry thing was kind of a teenage crush.
Yeah, but then of course they split Nix Okami into the Trace and Rafa, and then they decided to get rid of the romance plot, which is one of the dumbest things that I think that they've ever done. Because people were already pissed off about it. The right people were already pissed off about it before it happened. And then they gave them no reason to be pissed off about it, which is stupid. So, and you had this very interesting subplot of the, I don't know how canon it is anymore, book about Ahsoka as well.
Yeah, right.
The one written by
E.K. Johnston.
E.K. Johnston. There's a bit of a romance thingy in there, but it was very subtle and kind of one way or something.
So like a one-way crush. To and not even really
exactly. So there's dancing around this, and it's like, can we actually like do something with this somewhere, please? Like, it's weird how they've teased us with this stuff, both in the stories and then in the development of the stories. It's kind of odd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just kept changing it and missing it.
And all of this within the context of Mara Jade being deleted from canon, and Luke just never having that. Like, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Oh man. And we'll have one final super chat here. Joel wanting to weigh in on everything that's going on with the strikes in Hollywood, saying apart from the residuals, the biggest sticking point when it comes to the strike is who controls the AI tech moving forward. It's a big part of it.
If anyone has not seen the first episode of the new season of Black Mirror on Netflix, I would recommend watching it, because it is good social commentary through their sci-fi Twilight Zone-y stuff that they do on that show about how AI might end up like a dystopian version of the future, where AI is really changing how entertainment works. So
ironically, on Netflix.
Yes. Well, it's funny because it's like I actually was kind of I gasped. Is that the right word? I was astonished while watching it because it is an episode on Netflix that is about Netflix, and that is actually criticizing a potential direction that Netflix could go in. So I thought that at least points for Netflix allowing that to happen and having a cartoon, a caricature version of Netflix in the show called something else. I forget what it's called, Strawberry or something like that. Streamberry. They call it Streamberry. In that episode, but it's the same. The font is the same as like the Netflix.
Oh wow! On Netflix.
Yeah, it's like the same color. It's red.
Wow.
So it's really funny. So, but Joel is very right here. One of the reasons why I was kind of shocked to see that episode of Black Mirror is I was just talking about that with someone like a few weeks before. I was telling somebody like, this is the way things are going right now if they don't change anything. In probably 5 to 10 years, the way entertainment's going to work is you're going to a la carte put together what you want to watch. Like you're making food. Like you're just going to be like, okay, so I want to see Star Wars, but I want to see Star Wars with Benedict Cumberbatch in it. And so then you're just going to see Star Wars, but Benedict Cumberbatch is just going to be a random character or be playing somebody in Star Wars. And he's playing Snoke or who knows what, and like that's just what
young Snoke.
Yeah, that's just what it's going to be, and it's like something that I said a while ago, and I think who might have said this? Was it Jon Favreau? Jon Favreau kind of alluded to this in one of the Gallery Mandalorian the musical things, like this idea of like the actors that we have now, if they keep going the rate that they're going, those are the actors that we're already going to have. So the industry is going to get really confusing if they don't change anything, because what's going to end up happening, and we've already seen kind of bits and pieces of this here and there, a little bit in Star Wars, a little bit in Fast and Furious, all the de-aging like in Indiana Jones, where, 10 years from now, you're just going to have Pirates of the Caribbean 20 with Johnny Depp, but it's not actually Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp will have been retired, and he's will be getting some residual maybe from it, maybe not. I don't know. And then he's not really going to be making decisions creatively about how his acting is happening. And you're just going to see this CGI AI version of Jack Sparrow. And what you're going to end up missing is, one, you're going to end up missing potentially money going back to the actors who are their images are being used. Two, they're gonna be performing in ways that they don't control, that's controlled by an AI or controlled by some type of director or producer, or the audience itself, and then additionally, you're not going to have another Johnny Depp. You're not going to have another teenager coming in to acting and then moving up in their career and then becoming a big star. It's not going to happen. You're not going to. Why would you have a new face that people have to? It's unsafe. You don't know if people are going to like them or not, when you already know people are going to like Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp's version. So like that's kind of the stuff that's probably going to happen if things don't change. So
and that's the sort of going down the road a little ways. One of the sticking points for the Actors Guild was that in the final studio proposal, they wanted to get the rights to every single background actor, scan their image, and then for future projects, instead of hiring all those background actors again, they would just populate the backgrounds digitally with these images, these people that they had scanned, and almost certainly they wouldn't compensate them or not compensate them as well as they would have had to if someone was on set for 12 hours. So that's one place where the Actors Guild is saying like, hey, no, like, yeah, okay, for in the immediate term, Johnny Depp, Scarlett Johansson, Ewan McGregor, Harrison Ford, like they'll all be fine. But it's the people who are filling out the backgrounds of the sets. It's going to start with them, and it'll be the kind of the tertiary characters, and then the secondary characters, which we're already kind of seeing, with like young Harrison Ford through the first 20 minutes of Indy 5, and then eventually it'll get to what you're talking about, Chris, which is all of them,
Yeah.
the stars, the secondary characters, the background actors. It'll all be AI, deep fake, whatever the hell we're calling it these days.
Yeah, and so that, it brings up an interesting question, which is like, can the human beings who comprise this industry right now, all the people that work on the sets, the writers, the actors, the directors, are they able to stand together to not allow that from happening? Because there's nothing really, like, if the studios want to get those contracts signed, some people will sign them.
Yeah.
And the thing will happen. It's like, you can't keep them from creatively making something, even if it's creatively dystopian and displaces people. You can't keep them from doing it. The only thing that you can do is you can band together and say, like, we're not going to work for you if you're also doing this, putting pressure on it from that perspective. And so I'm very curious to see if they're able to stop what is technically possible through a kind of moral perspective by, basically boycotting or striking the system. Like that would be, I'm very interested to see, because I haven't really,
I'll give you a comparison of this not working, or of where people, took the easy way out, where the people sort of in power took the easy way out. And this is from the world of sports. If we go back to the 2004 NHL lockout. So just to give you the context, the Hockey Players Association and the National Hockey League, their collective bargaining agreement came to an end, and the owners who own all the teams, they wanted to put in place a salary cap. So every team could spend up to this amount of money. Players obviously didn't want that, because they want to be able to make just as much money as they possibly can. And so the owners, it's a slightly different situation, because instead of the players going on strike, the owners locked out the players. And they lost the entire 2004-2005 season because of it. You look at the Stanley Cup, it says no season played. Like it does. Wow. That season just didn't exist. And what ultimately wound up happening was the star players, or at the very least, the very good players of that era, capitulated. And they said, we will go back to playing hockey. We will allow for a salary cap, because we're still going to get paid. And as a result, the NHL now has a salary cap. And so, the star players make like a ton of money. But like the third liners, the fourth liners, the kind of the bench players, you compare what a third liner in hockey makes compared to their equivalent in basketball or baseball, it's like peanuts in comparison. Compare what like a sort of a fringe roster player makes, again, peanuts compared to what they're making in the NBA and the MLB. So again, these are very, very rich athletes. It's hard to feel bad for somebody on a $3 million contract when you think they should be getting 12, but like that sort of thing. But this could happen here, where the older actors, the older writers can go, you know what, screw it, let's go back to work. We won't actually, these changes won't affect our careers. By the time these changes are coming in, we'll be retiring. We'll have made all the money we can make in this, so it won't affect us. And it's the next generation coming up that are going to face the problems. So these things do happen. Like we aren't guaranteed a happy ending here.
No.
For the writers and the actors.
So this is what should happen. If this, I'm assuming that this is going to work like any union dispute, and they're going to come up with a compromise that's going to work for everybody at some point, because typically that's how these things are resolved. But But let's say that this is a major point in the timeline of human history, and that it's like that these two forces are unmovable, movable force and objective
immovable force and
movable. I don't know.
Unstoppable force and an immovable
Thank
object.
you.
There we go. We got there in the end.
I forgot the word unstoppable. I'm like, what is that word? So yes, assuming that it's an unstoppable force of AI, the immovable object of the actors and other creative people in the other guilds and such. If that's the case, I would say what needs to happen is, what are the studios there for if all the creatives aren't in their house? Like, what are they there for other than to provide the business and financial structure for what's going on? And you mean to tell me that these creative people, especially the bigger actors and directors who are almost billionaires themselves, would not be able to figure out how to turn the unions into their own production houses? Like, that's really the only way that I could see this going if the studios aren't going to back down. Like, if the studios aren't going to back down and aren't going to provide concessions to protect people from the technology and what's happening, they've got to be circumvented. And we know they can be circumvented because independent film exists and will always exist. You can make movies outside of studios. So it's like, I would say to all the people in all these guilds, like, just go make movies and forget about these big companies, because these big companies, their number one priority is making money. It's, if you want creativity and the passion and the art to come first, you're never going to have a good time or the best time working for companies who have a bottom line, and people like Bob Iger, whose number one job isn't to make good stuff, but to make stuff that makes money. And so that's what I would say, is just circumvent the whole thing. Just take the unions and turn them into production companies.
And you saw this happened a little bit. I can think of one example during the last writer strike that happened. And it's a guy who's kind of, persona non grata in Hollywood these days. But Joss Whedon did this during the last writer strike with Dr. Horrible's Sing Along blog. It is a 3-part web series that, stars some pretty impressive names, Neil Patrick Harris, Nathan Fillion. Like, it's a real deal TV show that was made in the midst of the strike without any involvement from the studios. So it can be done. And you need someone, and
like Joel said in the chat, the United Artists. There's lots of things like that.
It's happened all through history. So we'll see where this winds up.
I'm just waiting for this to happen. Like, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, at what point are people going to actually start working together to fix the problems that everybody has? Because everybody's been complaining for a very long time. Everybody's been complaining, and there's two things that are the same, the two sides of the same coin. Security and complacency are two sides to the same coin. The reason why things aren't getting changed is because people are complacent, because our lives are a little bit too easy, and so we don't want to shake things up too much.
We don't want to risk it.
Yeah, but at the same time, too easy means security. We have the security to actually do drastic things because it's not going to affect us as much as it could in other situations in the past or in other types of societies. So I would say, let's take advantage of the security that we have and do some drastic things and actually challenge the system that exists, because I'm pretty sure that most people can agree that the concept of shares existing for its own form of AI swapping should not be the driving force behind creativity and culture. And that's what exists right now. It's literally there are computers that are taking the value of Disney, and they're moving it around constantly and slowly draining it out and giving it to people that have nothing to do with the creative process or culture. Like that is what is happening, and it's its own dystopian thing, and people aren't really calling it out. People are kind of content to be ignorant of it, just like, in the Matrix, how ignorance is bliss. People are literally blissfully ignorant of the fact of what's actually happening in the world. And it's like, people need to like wake up and realize like culture, Disney, Star Wars, creativity, people making movies and other forms of art, it is all subjugated to computers that are constantly running everybody's money through programs. The money doesn't even exist. It's not even real. It's a number on a screen. And like, it's just enriching people that are plugged into that system, and they're leeching. They're like vultures and vampires, and they're leeching off of everybody else's work, everybody else's energy. And like, yeah, people are, they just want to watch their show, and they want to go to bed. And I'm like, when is this? When are people going to be done with this? When?
I could see this going one of two ways. I could see this either ending with the writers and actors getting what they, are like not really getting what they want, kind of being back to square one and just not making a whole lot of progress because they are put in a desperate situation, or them being really successful and maybe inspiring some other industries to go on strike and to make some things and maybe make some even larger societal progress because this is pretty big. This is the first time in 60 years that both the actors and writers have gone on strike at the same time. This is historic, no matter how you look at it, no matter how it turns out. It's already historic, but how historic will it be towards the end?
That's the question. And that's the question that we're going to leave you with tonight. We begin to wind things down and wrap things up for this week because I got to go to bed, so I got to end the show. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the wide-ranging discussion that we had this week. Everything from the Ahsoka series to the Emmys to Bob Iger, back to the Ahsoka series to the strikes and everything else in between that we covered. A very wide variety of topics tonight, and that's what we like to do here on this show, all under the wonderful umbrella of Star Wars. Ben, thank you as always for hosting.
Oh, it was a pleasure as always. All the craziness going on, Bob Iger turning to the dark side, historic strikes, historic Ahsoka trailers. It's been a pleasure. It's been things, and who knows what's gonna happen next? Because it's like how long is this stuff gonna last? But we know Ahsoka's happening. We know Ahsoka probably will be having a press tour now. That's gonna be interesting. I think this is this the first Star Wars production kind of coming out underneath a giant strike, a multi-strike now? So that's gonna be interesting to see how this play out. Kind of sucks for all the actors that won't get to participate in promoting their stuff and getting to talk about it and getting the limelight for it. But
I think they're allowed to promote stuff that's already done. They just can't continue making new things. I think that was one of the provisions of the strike.
Okay. Well, in that case, maybe things will be halfway normal, at least for a time. We shall see. This is a learning experience for me because I'm very ignorant of most of this stuff. So it's very fascinating in a weird way. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. And also, I'll point you in the direction of my other podcast, IPC. We talked about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We recorded it last night, and it'll be out later this week. We also did our top 5 Indiana Jones movies. And you're thinking, wait, there's only 5 Indiana Jones movies. What is this madness? We couldn't pass up the opportunity to do the most ironic top 5 list possible and just rank our Indiana Jones movies. So that's what we did. So it was a lot of fun. Go ahead, check it out later this week.
Check it out. Tune in to the Intergalactic Peace Coalition podcast, IPC. Chris, thank you for joining us live from wherever the hell you are.
I don't know where I am. So, did you ever think that about how, 50 years from now, someone's just going to type into a computer, can make the Star Wars Underworld podcast review the latest Star Wars movie, and then they'll just the computer will just watch all of these episodes on YouTube and just generate a new one with us talking about something completely different. Like,
we'll be obsolete someday. Yeah. What will we be ranting about then? What will we be outrageously, unnecessarily angry about? I can't imagine.
That's crazy.
Wild stuff. Well, if you want to make sure that happens or doesn't happen, I'm not sure which, you can make sure you subscribe. Punch the subscribe button to hear and see us well. It's still actually us and not a computer. You can become a channel member if you want to support us.
I like Star Wars. I am excited for the Star Wars Ahsoka series.
I'm going to turn myself off now.
If you can also become a channel member if you want to support us financially, or super chat with us next week to be included in Ask the SWU. The other way to do that is, of course, to join our Discord, the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord. Speaking of the Star Wars Underworld Network, there's all sorts of great shows there, like the Raeside, Ion Cannon, which records right here, and Tales from Beyond the Galaxy. Anything else? I don't know. That's about it. Can we do Ben's Connection Corner real quick? Anybody up for that? Ben, you have any connections you wanted to make?
Yeah, we have some connections in the trailer.
The droid, I didn't get any connections myself, but I'll steal some from people I saw online. The droid in Sabine, there's an E-Wing, first of all, E-Wing. This is the first live-action E-Wing. The droid in the E-Wing is based on the original R2-D2 action figure from, like, way back in 78, maybe. And that's all the ones I can remember. So there you go. Ben's Connection Corner. There you go.
Do. Bop, bop. There we go. All right. We'll be back next week to talk about all sorts of things that are going on. Actually, next week will be kind of interesting because it'll be after day one of San Diego Comic-Con. So we might have some things to talk about from there. We might have some content recorded from there. Who knows? But tune in to find out. That's it. That does it. We'll be back next week. Hope you'll join us all then. But for Ben, for Chris, for Hannah, for all the other people of the Star Wars Underworld, I was too quick on the end title card. My name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. It's a wrap.